Thank you, Jim. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Monday, May 16th, Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board. I see we have a quorum, so we can get going here. Under business, confirmation of modification of meeting agenda. I think we updated it with one new Mr. Meeks coming on, but other than that, I know of no other changes. Jim and Gretchen, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. You've all received Jim's meeting notes. Any comments, corrections? Hearing none, could I have a motion to approve the meeting notes?
So move, Craig.
Second, Edna.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. Have you all had a chance to look at the April 18th and May 2nd minutes?
Yes.
Any changes, corrections? Hearing none, could I have a motion to accept both sets of minutes, April 18 and May 2?
So moved, Edna.
Thank you. Second, please.
Second, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. Thank you. New applications. First up is Gary Meek, 399 Mill Road. This is for site plan review for an HVAC installation. Mr. Meek, are you with us? Jim?
I don't see him in the room, Melody.
All right, what I'm going to suggest, since we have time, as we move ahead to the second new application. I see Warren is here. I believe Warren is involved with this one. Is that right, Warren?
I am.
Okay, so let me move ahead and we'll circle back if Mr. Meek shows up. This is Grace Bible Fellowship Church, 6959.
Oops. Sorry.
That's all right. I can
Sorry
find
about
it.
that. Got ahead of myself.
6959 Route 9 North, site plan, special use permit and wetlands permit, proposed addition. So Warren, I'll turn it over to you. I guess
Thank
Rod
you,
has
Melody.
to as well.
Yeah, Rod Morrison is with me here for the LRC Group engineers, and I believe Wayne Kreider, representing Grace Bible Fellowship Church, is or will be joining us as well. This application, this site, I should say, has been before the planning board before. A few years ago, there was an application very similar in scope at that time, though we were adding a partial second floor of the new addition to provide classrooms. Since that time, the applicant has decided they really don't have a need for that many classrooms. So essentially, the application is to effectively double the footprint of the church, not to increase the size of the congregation, which I'm sure they'd like to do, but simply to provide more facilities for the existing congregation, which I think has been relatively stable for some years. The intent is to provide a large fellowship hall at the north end of the building for activities such as annual harvest dinners and so forth, for indoor athletic activities for members of the congregation, things like that, gathering space, but not primarily designed for any other purpose. And then there are a couple of Sunday school classrooms proposed for basically facing Route 9. And on the other side, a larger restroom facility right now that's sort of underserved, and a larger kitchen to serve those dinners when they have them, with a new entry between the two pieces of the building. So that is really the scope. And again, the footprint has not changed, I don't think much at all, if at all, since it was last reviewed by this board 2 years ago. But other things have changed, mostly to do with the site and to address stormwater, septic, and all those fun engineering things that Rod Morrison is going to go into a little more detail about. But so that is the scope of the project. There's an outdoor play area proposed to the north of the building. I'm saying the north, it's really probably a little more east there, and just outdoor activity area. But this is accompanied by a reconfiguration of the parking lot, including some banked parking, which Rod will talk about, and again addressing stormwater and site septic system issues. I believe a variance will be required, and I think Rod's going to address that too. But that's the overview of the project. And with that, I guess I would ask maybe Rod to give a synopsis from the engineering point of view.
Sure. Thanks, Warren. Hey, everybody. How are you?
Good.
Yeah, the site plan looks very, very similar to what we've worked on for several years. The addition, as Warren has pointed out, of the meeting hall space right there. The vast majority of that is a large gathering room. We work through the health department, and it's just as well to point that out first because it ties into the parking, that that capacity was nearly a direct match to what the capacity of the sanctuary hall is. So 180 patrons is the number. The addition in their case of a commercial kitchen changes our health department requirements, but in terms of building capacity, the health department's agreed that with statements from the church that the intended use is, as Warren is describing, events in a peak moment, events for, say, like a church Christmas event, something like that, potentially a wedding of a congregation member. Our usage would be by parishioners. So in the front of the building, and actually not only in the front of the building, but in the entire property, we underwent a land contour change permit back in 2014, built in 2015, I believe, to construct the ball field, which is wonderful. Also did other efforts on site to improve the drainage around the property. Again, thanks for the zooming around here. That all went well, fine. We corrected and helped move water from Route 9 out around the property to hopefully facilitate better soils conditions, which proved out to be the case when we did our soils test with the health department in 2019. The existing parking area, as shown in this picture, is a great big mass of pavement. There's lighting behind the parking area and on the side, of which we intend to keep it all. When you look at the parking calculation for the new expansion, and that's on the site plan sheet, we generated a number. We generated a table that showed a total number, and we applied at the time, and I think we originally created this, geez, Warren, correct me, but back prior to the land contour change permit, a concept of a shared parking percentage. We discussed with this board a shared factor of, say, 50%. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we are arriving at a number of total spaces required being very close to what is on the property presently, and that seems to fit with what the church intends to do. Again, where this is a little different, it's a special use on an existing non-conforming parcel. No one can just come in, reoccupy as a commercial use and reuse the space. So the parking calculation is specific to the use on the property. The church has indicated to us that they anticipate that with the hall, they would use the same sort of parking, same amount of parking that they do now. So the challenge that we encountered, which creates a lot of site work here, is when we create a drop-off, handicap parking and code compliance for accessible parking, it triggers really a regrading of the parking area, unfortunately, which carries all the way across the existing lot. So we've created, and what's shown here in that grayscale are 70 spaces, same as the sheet, as the table shows, and then we bank 38 spaces. But when we went through and realized that we were going to have to regrade the existing parking area, again, I say unfortunately, we've tried not to do that. It occurred to us that, well, if we would like to propose bank spaces, let's remove the existing spaces which are down closest to the stream corridor. And you'll see there are 18 banked down there in that location. Yes, those are existing spaces. Again, if we're regrading and the whole area, why not remove those and put those into the banked parking? And I think that long term, even if there was a need to build additional spaces, those would be the last ones we would choose, because that's just a great spot to have the pavement go through, stormwater practices and cleansing practices which don't exist presently. So the application proposes bank spacing, yes, and also as a part of that proposes movement of paved area and built area away from the wetland and floodplain. So I hope the board thinks that's a positive benefit. We do here. But nonetheless, we have a calculation of bank spaces, 38 spaces, based on the numbers that we have in there. The area of disturbance, because we've had to rebuild the parking, is 2.23 acres, I believe the EAF says. Our numbers in the EAF include the parking as if it was built. So the stormwater is designed as if all the parking was built. We didn't take any credit for that at this time. I wouldn't mind working with the board's representative to reduce our paved area a little bit more if we can going forward. I mean, we're showing a 24-foot aisle width standard around the new parking area on the northern portion over there. I think that since that's one way we can reduce it, but nonetheless, we've tried to create a plan that's as compliant as possible. So with that, we've designed a stormwater system and stormwater compliance for the DEC. We've got a septic field in the front, which is compliant for the entire facility based on what we've agreed to with the health department. It replaces the old septic system in the front yard. We've got increased landscaping in the front. We had done landscaping originally, and some of it took back in 2014, 2015, some of it did not. So we've got some supplementation in there. Again, as far as lighting goes, we were feeling that the existing 5 lights in the back parking lot are more than adequate. There's no reason to light up that area any more than it is presently. So we're intending to keep those. All I would say about those is there are 3 in the back. You'll see there by our little S curve, which is a stormwater practice. We've left them in place behind the current parking. If the board is supportive and is in agreement that those parking spaces would be never built or potentially the last ones built, we might suggest that we would move those up closer to the existing pavement. So all in all, I think we've covered all the bases on a parcel that's been very geologically difficult for our client. They've been established there for a really long time and have a large investment in the property. And as everybody knows who drives by there through the summer, they have several events where tents are out and so on. So the addition of this expansion and a gathering hall and a few classrooms is something they've been after for years. So I think, barring specific questions, that's it. Warren, back to you.
No, I think that's correct, Rod. And I don't know again if Wayne joined the call or if he has anything he wants to add at the moment about the intent of the congregation, but he has assured me and Rod many times that they don't see this facility as being designed to be rented out to others for events. That's not their intent or their desire here. If that makes any difference, it's purely for the use of the existing congregants and any new ones that happen to join. But it's not seen as something to necessarily earn money for the church. Just serving a need for an indoor space for fellowship activities. And the plan there shows the existing sanctuary on the right, the new entrance within an older part of the building. And then the new wing with some classrooms, bathrooms, a kitchen, and the fellowship hall at the left-hand side there.
Okay, thank you, Warren.
Yeah.
Jim, do you have comments?
Yeah, I have a couple questions, so I can get right into them. There is a wetland on the property, as discussed, and the parking area is right adjacent to it. Actually, it's within the wetland buffer. The new parking, if we bank those spaces, actually reduces the amount of impervious area that's within that wetland buffer. So I did want to note that. But I did have a question, and it kind of ties back into your comments, Rod. I didn't know exactly what you had planned with the bank parking, if it was just going to be used as, if it's going to be paved in the future, if you were proposing it as say grass pavers, or some type of reinforced, grass area that people could park on. And that was one of the thoughts I had, given that it is in the wetland buffer area, if that would be something that would be, well, particularly for the ones in the wetland buffer, if that would be something that would be considered is, some grass pavers or something. I don't know if pervious pavement would make sense given the wetland right there, if that would, result in anything, or if it's already so wet that the pervious pavement wouldn't really gain you anything. But just some considerations like that being in that buffer area. But again, it did reduce the overall amount of impervious surface that's there currently. So that was a good thing to see. But I don't know if you have any thoughts on. I think you said
just whenever you're ready for me to answer, I will.
Yep. Sorry, go ahead.
Considering where it is and understanding for years the church's operation, and in my mind, really believing that it's never going to be built, what I would like to do is remove the pavement that's in that area, remove any compacted subsoil, restore it to grass presently. And then at a time that, if sometime in the future somebody deemed that it needed to be built as parking, it would need to be excavated and have the understory and understructure of actual parking. So what we would like to do then is, like I said, is pull out everything that's there that's compacted, turn it into lawn, and then have it really function nicely as an improved buffer towards that wetland.
Yeah, and if you're looking to move the lights but still retain, the ability to potentially use that in parking later, you'd have to look at your lighting standards and things. But it does seem like at least one of those lights could be kind of moved to the right, where you kind of swing down in the curve and then come over to the bank parking.
Two are easy to move, and we don't mind moving them, but we didn't want to assume for potentially what might be perceived as our personal benefit, just sliding them forward. But we'd love to move them forward. I mean, the poles and the bases, it's not hard work. It's part of what I perceive as a nice restoration of that area into lawn. So again, they would commit to in the future someday moving them back, building parking if for some reason that was necessary. We just don't believe that at all.
Yeah, well, if they were willing to give up a space or two, you could even just make it a parking island, keep the light
absolutely.
there, and then you wouldn't have to necessarily move them at all. So just two thoughts there. I do believe you'll need a variance for the building coverage, as you mentioned. So I think you covered that. Just wanted to mention that. I didn't see any information on the plans about the building on lot coverage. I only saw building coverage. So if you can provide a number on the lot coverage, overall lot coverage, we typically like to see that in the chart. Shouldn't be a big deal, but just have that information added in there. Warren, I saw in the EAF, there was reference to a historic stone church on the property, but I didn't actually see any details.
It's next door. It's actually in the adjacent property to the northeast along Route 9.
The adjacent property. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, thank you. Just a couple more. I saw on the entranceway that's coming in, you have proposed the kind of, I guess it's the box here for the truck traffic coming in and out. Is that something that the visitors and their regular automobiles will be able to get through and past? Or is there an issue there because we don't have pavement? Just kind of looking at this from the construction, for the term of the construction.
Yeah, we have graphics on the drawing that are things that would be standard in an erosion and sediment control plan. Knowing that the pavement would need, in the period of time that pavement would need to be reconstructed, there is a tracking pad placed there at the edge of where the existing pavement would be cut and the new pavement would be ultimately put in. So there is a gap in time, and there is a sequencing that we haven't figured out or talked about with the church necessarily, about the era of when that is rebuilt and how their patrons might access the church. So that's not thought through logistically, but the point of that being placed there is it's where the existing pavement ends and the new pavement ultimately begins. Obviously that would be removed at a point in time when everything is paved.
Yeah, no, certainly I was more concerned about everyone being able to get in to the site during construction, if that's in the main driveway, to still be able to drive your cars in and out.
No, when that parking lot gets rebuilt, it's a total rebuild. So we would need to consult with the church as to how they might like to do that at that time, and maybe they'll do something elsewhere in the period. So.
Okay. And then the only other thing that I kind of caught my eye is that I noticed some of the grasses and perennials that were proposed can be fast spreading. Some of them could potentially be toxic. It's not necessarily a problem. It's somewhat common, but if you can take a second look at the choices that were there, just make sure that there are no unintended consequences with what you're planning, that's not going to spread invasively and take over where you don't want it to, or maybe have it, a toxic bush somewhere where kids, might touch it or something on the way in. They have their place. Just want to make sure we're doing the things the right way.
We'll
General-
cover that with the landscape architect.
Yep, but gentlemen, I think that was it for me. Mostly just a couple questions.
Okay, planning board members, questions or comments? Craig?
Yeah, is there any subsurface disposal or storm drain, either from the existing parking lot or from the existing building or from the proposed parking lot? I mean, are there any pipes under the ground that daylight anywhere?
There, if you can flip through the grading plan, potentially, there is in the corner, if maybe we go to the existing conditions plan.
Sorry, which plan would you like me to go through, Rob?
Yeah,
Trying to find the right one.
early on. Yeah, I think it's right after the cover sheet. Right there.
That's existing.
Yep,
Okay.
that's existing conditions. There is storm drain outlet right about where the cursor is. That collects water around the existing church, largely from the front yard, which comes in there off of Route 9. That was a construct based on the land contour change plans that were done 6 or 7 years ago. But the existing parking lot has no treatment. The soil throughout there is clay. So that water, in our understanding, really just runs out in that direction across the parking lot, comes out in that corner. I'm pretty sure that the kind of extension of the wetland delineation line is a result of that outlet being over there on the other side of the parking lot. Our proposal, however, because we have to comply with the DEC stormwater regs, expands the area where it shows playground right there into a bioretention area to bring as much of that water as possible over in there. And then against the parking, we have in DEC terms, a stone diaphragm and a grass swale to provide treatment before that water goes into the creek. So it's
Okay,
a
is that also-
significant improvement.
Is that also going to include the downspouts for the roof of the existing or the proposed addition?
Yeah, I haven't personally evaluated the existing church. The downspouts coming off of the proposed expansion, we would run into our bioretention area.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
All right, thanks.
Yep, sure.
Other planning board members? Okay, Jim, I guess we're ready to look at the procedural resolution. Okay, Jim, you want to run through it?
Yeah, so a draft procedural resolution accepting the application and supporting documents is adequate for further review by the planning board, its advisors, and the public. We'll classify this as a type 2 under seeker. Schedule a public hearing for
June 20th.
June 20th at 6:15. We'll send this to the CAB. Given what I just heard from Warren, I don't believe we need to send this to HAPAC, so we can scratch that off of the resolution. And we need to assign planning board members for a site visit.
Who would like to make a site visit?
I'll go.
Sean? Who would like to go with Sean?
I'll go.
Craig. Sean and Craig will go. Okay,
May I just note that I won't be here on June 20th, so unless Rod wants to handle the public hearing on his own, which he might not, or might not be available to do, I would have to ask for a later date for the public hearing.
I would prefer that the full team be here,
Right, I understand.
unless you want me explaining your architecture. So
No, that's fine.
changing it actually.
that will take you out, to July, Warren. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, Gretchen, what's the July date?
I'm looking The 18th.
Then check the 18th.
Okay. All right, so the resolution will read July 18th. Sean and Craig will go. Pretty much summarizes it. Could I have a motion to accept the draft procedural resolution?
So moved, Edna.
Thank you, Edna. Second.
Second, Sean.
Sean, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you. Warren, I hope you're going on a vacation.
I am for a change.
Good for you. All right, next up, has Mr. Meek arrived, Jim?
I don't believe so. And he may not be, Melody, in which case, if you'd like, I can probably run through it, but can you just let me know?
All right, well, we'll continue on and we'll take that up last then. Next up, Grinnell Street Properties, Grinnell Street, site plan and special use permit replacement of in-ground swimming pool. Okay,
Okay, that's still me, or me again, I should say, representing the applicant. I don't know if the owner is present, but this is an application to basically put back in the ground an in-ground swimming pool on virtually the same footprint, one that was there many years ago. It's a somewhat an unusual project, although there is another pool just further down Grinnell Street, further to the north, I should say. And I think at one time there might have been a third one, all associated, or at one time associated with the properties across the road. I think, in fact, it could have been at one time that the properties connected with the tie line across the road. And I don't think that's the case anymore because Grinnell Street is a public street. But there were several properties that had smaller properties sort of on the bluff, if you will, overlooking the Hudson. And this is one of them that had a pool. And so the intent is to put a new pool in. It's again, very, very similar. I think the older pool had a slightly different shape, a lozenge shape. This is just a rectangle. But that is the substance. So this is not typically a primary use for a parcel, obviously, but it's one of the sort of pre-existing non-conforming, as are indeed many things in the hamlet of Rhinecliff. And I think the zoning officer determined it was reasonable to put a pool back in since there had been a pool there at one time. I don't know that there's much more I can tell you about it. We had topo checked. In the process of having it resurveyed, we found that the northern property line actually changed a little bit in the applicant's favor by a few feet, but that doesn't really change substantively the application here.
thank you, Warren. Jim?
Yeah, I mean, I took a look. It's a little unusual proposal, but given, as Warren said, that we are in the hamlet, setbacks and things like that are generally set by, neighboring properties, looking at the existing conditions of the surroundings. I really don't have any issues. It's going in where essentially an existing pool is, and I believe, is it filled in, Warren? Did you
It
mention
was
that?
filled in at one point, yes.
So kind of taking out the one that's filled in and kind of putting another one back in. Didn't see a lot of issues with it. Noted that might be worthwhile considering some landscaping around it, although it might be tight up against the road. I'm not sure, and the property line. But that was really about it. Didn't really see anything else.
Comments from planning board members, questions? Okay, hearing none at this time. Jim, do you want to put up the draft procedural resolution? Okay.
Draft procedural resolution for your consideration, accepting the application and supporting documents is adequate for further review. Classifying this proposed action as type 2 under seeker. We will send this to the CAB and WAC for review. This will also go to HAPAC because it is in the historic district. We will schedule a hearing for, what was it, June 20th, is that right?
Can we do July 18th again?
I'm sorry,
Sure.
July 18th for Warren's request. I'll send it to county planning and need to delegate planning board members for a site visit.
Who would like to go to Rhinecliff?
I can go.
Edna
Joe also.
and Joe, thank you. All right, Jim, does that cover it?
Does
Okay, can I have a motion to accept the draft procedural resolution?
So moved, Edna.
Thank you, Edna. Second.
Second, Joe.
Second, Joe. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, the motion carries. Thank you very much. Thanks, Warren.
Thank you.
Next up, Nora Brackus, 9 William Street, site plan and special use permit for a proposed addition. I believe Nora, I see Nora's iPad is here. Nora, would you like to let us know what you're proposing, unless you have someone else here to speak for you?
I'm Steve Cornicini. Can you see me in the meeting?
I see your name.
Yes. So I'm the builder acting on behalf of Nora and Jurgis.
Okay,
Okay. So the proposed addition, like we did submit a floor plan also, is for a new bedroom, bathroom on the first floor of the existing house.
Can anyone hear me?
yes,
Yes.
Okay, I can't see, I don't know Zoom very well, so I'm here listening to you.
Okay.
well, welcome. We're glad you're here.
Thank you.
Anything else you want to say, Steve?
No, other than like I said, the house was a 3-bedroom house. It has since become a 2-bedroom house. Even though we're adding a master bedroom and bathroom, we're not changing any of the design criteria for the existing sewage disposal systems.
Okay, Jim?
Okay, so my notes referred to what Steve just mentioned about the number of bedrooms. The addition is proposed to be in the backyard, but this is a corner lot. It is located on, I'm sorry, it's a corner lot. But again, we are in the hamlet, so the setbacks and things are typically looked at in terms of the neighboring properties and impact on neighboring properties. I did mention I did see renderings. The renderings were in there. That was a mistake. They're up on the screen right now. So we do have the rendering elevations that were provided. But I didn't see anything on the color. I think in the pre-conference discussions, we talked about the color would be the same as the existing house. It's
Correct.
there now.
Yes. Our
Yeah.
intention is to match all the siding, window trims, color, roofing, everything that's on the existing house.
Yeah. So here's one of the pictures that was submitted of the existing house right now. So other than that, this will go to HAPAC for their review, but I don't see necessarily any planning issues with the proposal. But I did just want to ask what might happen with the vegetation that you can kind of see off to the right here, the bushes and things, and how the contractors will get access. Are those going to come down to get access, or are you going to come around the other side of the house? And if so, are there plans to kind of reinstall any of that landscaping that might come down along the road?
The issue is the new bedroom addition it won't be any closer to the property line than the existing living room that you see in the middle of this picture. So that there's really, unless we plant on the right of way, there is no room for for vegetation in front of the house.
So the existing vegetation will remain?
No, it has to come out because it's
Oh, it has to come out.
It is where the addition is being proposed.
Okay, I got you. Okay.
But the vegetation on what's already the standing there, it just hasn't sprouted in the winter picture there.
Right.
And that really isn't the front of the house. That's the side of the house.
Right.
Okay.
Understood, but it does front on Kelly Street. So that was my question. So we'll change that look from Kelly Street because that vegetation will come down.
Yeah, I mean, stuff can be planted. I would recommend, a lower type shrub or hedge type natural barrier there. But again, we are 12 inches off the property line, so there's not a lot of room. So the other thing that our intent is to actually add windows, which if you look at the picture also, there's it's just a blank wall. So we want to bring some character back to the house and have some windows that will actually face on Kelly Street. We're in the process now looking at some fire rated windows. If that's not possible to get a fire rated window that's architecturally meeting with the house, then we are going to do a faux type window with shutters on it to match all the existing trim, and then have a set of shutters that would look like the windows just closed up.
Will we have the details of that going forward?
They should be on the one of those
The
Draft,
elevation, the elevation shows. Let's see, where are we?
not that one.
Now there should be another plan.
Yeah, another page.
There we go. So this elevation, if you look at the north elevation, shows 2 windows on the north side. Again, initially they were intended to be just dummy windows to give the detail that matches the old house. And then there's also a window on the Kelly Street side of the house, which is
East.
east. Yeah, the east elevation. So we're going to add 2 windows on that elevation also to bring some character back to that blank wall.
Okay. Jim, anything else?
Nope, that was it. Again, I think a lot of the design element discussion may come from HAPAC, but not for me. In terms of planning, again, because we're in the hamlet, there's some flexibility on these types of things. Now we know what the plan is for the existing vegetation. So
Yeah.
that's all I have.
Yeah, the issue is if we do put windows in, they have to be fire rated because we are, within 5 feet of the property line. So both sides of the addition would have to have fire rated windows, and there actually will be a fire rated wall in the addition.
Yeah, so I would think the planning board might want to see those. I think HAPAC would probably want to see the proposed windows in terms of the design.
Mhm.
Just putting that out there.
Okay.
Questions from planning board members?
We see a floor plan?
Yes, I did submit a floor plan.
Didn't see it here. A floor plan that shows the rest of the house?
No, we just did a floor plan of the addition.
And there was another plan, Steve, that we had where it showed where the bathroom and the bedroom would be.
Yeah, that was the floor plan.
Yeah, I don't see it up there. though.
Yeah, give me a second. I'll see if I can find that.
Okay.
Still looking. I have the site plan, existing elevations, cover letter, pictures. I don't know. I don't think I have. I think I've showed everything I have in the
Okay.
file.
I'm simply suggesting that when we see a bedroom added, we typically see a floor plan for the entire house.
Okay. I mean, I do have a floor plan in my file. I assumed it was part of the our package, but I guess it didn't end up in the package.
Well, that's all right. Let's just make sure we get it in the package going forward, and maybe you could have that available when people come on the site visit.
Sure.
Okay. And we get it to Jim and Gretchen so that it's included.
Okay.
Any other comments from planning board members? All right, Jim, we have a procedural resolution.
To do. So again, draft procedure resolution for your consideration, accepting the application supporting documents is adequate for further review, classifying the proposed action, excuse me, as type 2 under seeker. This project will be referred to the Conservation Advisory Board, the Waterfront Advisory Committee, and HAPAC, as we are in the historic district in the RCO. It'll go to county planning. We will schedule the public hearing for, this is going to be June 20th.
Yes.
June 20th. And we need to determine who would like to do a site visit.
Who would like to make a site visit?
I'll go.
I'm sorry, who spoke up?
Michael?
Oh, Michael, I didn't see you. Welcome. Michael,
I'll go.
Michael and Edna. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Quick
All right.
question. Will we be notified when the site visit is? Because I'd like to be there also.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Very, very nice to know.
Well, Michael and Edna will be in touch with you to arrange the site visit. Who do you want them to get in touch with, Steve or Nora?
Steve. Steve,
Okay,
is that okay? Because you come?
Excuse me?
Is that okay if they get in touch with you?
Oh, yes, yes, of course, yep.
Okay.
okay. All right, so that's how we'll handle it. Anything else? Hearing none, could I have a motion to accept the draft procedural resolution?
So moved.
Second, Edna.
Second, Edna, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed,
one-
abstention, the motion carries. Thank you.
One quick question.
Yes,
The June 20th, that'll be a public hearing?
yes, it will.
Okay, perfect.
Will that be Zoom?
As of this moment, right now, yes. We'll have to wait and see what happens.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, and then Gretchen will be in touch with via email as far as what we need to have together for the 20th?
Yes.
Because there was mention of a floor plan for the whole house. Is that necessary or just the addition?
I think you should add the site or the your floor plan for the whole house.
Okay.
You said you had it in your file.
No, I have a floor plan for the addition. We have not drawn up or did a floor plan for the existing house. I didn't think that was necessary.
I think I've heard some expressions that it would be helpful.
Okay. I mean, the previous meeting we had, there was no floor plan of the existing church, just the addition.
Well, the previous meeting didn't include all the planning board members.
Okay.
Well, there was a floor plan. But that's not relevant, but there was.
All right. Are we all set then?
Okay.
Okay, almost last under new applications, Wendy Maitland, 636 River Road, site plan review to install a pool.
Okay.
I see Wendy is with us.
Yes, and I'm Christopher Schmidt with Neve Group, representing Wendy. We're the ones building the pool for her.
Okay, why don't you tell us what you'd like to do?
So what we'd like to do is put in an 18 by 36 in-ground gunite pool with a proposed patio around it of approximately 350 square feet. As you can see with the current setbacks, we did have to go through zoning and did obtain a variance, given that it's a challenging lot with pretty much a pre-existing non-conforming situation, everything being outside of the current setbacks. In regards to planning board approval, we're just seeking a site plan approval to locate the pool on the property as is shown. Since our zoning board meeting, we have gotten the topography of the property as requested. It is a historical property, being that was built before 1800. We provided some details of the patio as well as the fence that will be going around the pool, as are shown there. Thank you. We also have some renderings towards the end of the packet. Well, first here, sorry, some photos with some painted lines of where the pool will be to show the existing garage structure as well as the vegetation around the pool space. And then the final section of the packet is the renderings of what we're going to be installing with the pool, the patio, and the pool enclosure fencing.
And has the variance been approved already, or are you still before the board?
No, we have received approval from them.
Okay.
I believe it was attached to the application. If it wasn't, I can certainly provide that.
I can confirm that they've received approval.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jim, comments?
Yeah, so I think this one has been pretty well pulled together. The pool is generally screened from view by in the roads, by the outcropping along River Road, the existing house, the garage that's there, and a line of trees along one side of the property. This has been looked at by the ZBA. The only real question that I had is that on the fence details, and I think it's just a minor clarification. It looked like the total height of the fence in some places was up to 7 feet, but I think, Chris, it's because this black line here represents where the ground would be for that 30 inches. So if there's any way we can just simply maybe add to this plan on the note to just label that as ground or something like that, just to clarify it. Like I say, I was pretty sure that was the case, but just to make sure that that's clear for the future, if anyone ever comes back and looks at it.
Sure.
Or even just a note of some kind of, see, it's already, stamped and signed, but whatever we can do to clarify that, just so that we are sure that that's the case, I think would be good. And then that matches up obviously with the gate that's shown there in the heights. So.
Okay.
Again,
Yeah, I'll make that adjustment. For sure. Thank you for.
Yep, not a big deal, just a minor clarification. Other than that, like I say, it's well screened. The mechanicals are they're inside the garage, right? So there's no screening issues there like we sometimes have with other discussions of the mechanicals. The variance has been required, and the technical specs seem to be met in the notes that I usually require on the plans. So that's about it for me.
Questions from planning board members? Okay, hearing none, I think we have a draft procedural resolution.
We do. So draft procedure resolution for your consideration, accepting the application supporting documents is adequate for further review by the planning board, classifying this action as type 2 under seeker. We will send this to the CAB, the WAC, because we are still within the LWRP area, as well as HAPAC because we are in the historic district. We'll send it to county planning for review, as we would with any site plan review. Schedule the application for June 20th, 2022. If that works for you, Christopher.
Yes,
And
it does.
then just need to delegate planning board members for site visit.
Who
I
would
can
like
go.
to go?
Joe,
Joe's going. I'll go with Joe. Okay, all right. Could I have a motion? Yes,
Can I
Wendy?
just ask, do you know what date that you'll come to the site visit?
No. What we'll do
Okay.
is be in touch with you and select a mutually beneficial time.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, any other questions or comments? Could I have a motion to accept the draft procedural resolution?
So moved, Sean.
Thank you, Sean. Second.
Edna,
Thank you, Edna. All those in favor?
aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention, the motion carries. Okay, Jim, I'm assuming Mr. Meek is not here.
All right, thank you, everybody.
You're welcome.
No, I don't believe he's shown up.
Okay, Gretchen, I guess we'll just reschedule him.
Sure.
And when do we want to reschedule him?
You could put them on June 6th or the 20th. It's up to you. We only have 2 new ones for June 6th so far and a signed permit that was submitted today.
All right, why don't we do June 6th?
Okay.
Is that okay with you, Jim?
Oh, yeah, no, fine with me. Not my call.
Okay. All right, thank you, everybody. I think we'll move into the public hearings for this evening. First scheduled is Scott Lyons, 6961 Route 9 minor subdivision. You may recall we have been continuing this one, and I don't believe we have any new information to bring before you. I don't know that anybody is here representing Mr. Lyons.
No, I don't believe so, Melody. I could provide a little update on this if you'd like.
Okay,
In talking with the acting zoning enforcement officer and zoning administrator and taking a look at what's going on, as we've discussed many times in the past, there were several outstanding permit violations resolved that have been identified. They're still being worked on, to my understanding, and it may take some time to do that. Given we've continued this application several times and that we're not sure exactly when these issues may be resolved. It was my recommendation, and I did contact the applicant's representative, but it's my recommendation that we continue this to an undetermined date and time instead of continuing to do this every month or every other month. And at the time that they do, address these issues and decide to come back before the planning board, they'll just have to renotice the public hearing, but then we can continue it at that time.
any planning board members have comments or concerns? Is everyone in agreement with Jim's recommendation?
Yeah.
I move that we do that.
Thank you, Edna. Second.
Craig,
Thank you, Craig. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. Next up, Richard Kupchansky, 1 Schatzel Avenue, site plan and special use permit for a tavern and restaurant.
Okay, Warren Smith again, representing Richard Kopachansky. I believe that Richard may be on the call, and possibly his tenant. But Jim can confirm whether that's the case.
Well, I'm on.
Oh,
Richard is-
very good. Okay. So
Give me 1
this,
second, I'll pull up the file. Sorry.
okay, sorry, this application is for for reintroducing a restaurant into the building of One Chancel that was last occupied by China Rose. That's the ground floor. And the building size hasn't changed. There's no other changes to the use. A few years ago, I think it was a few years ago, I kind of lose track, we had an application to renovate the upstairs, put a couple of little office spaces in there and an updated bathroom. And at the time, an apartment for the kitchen staff was removed. Now we're not doing anything upstairs. We're just proposing again to sort of reoccupy the ground floor with a new restaurant, and in the process, make some site improvements that have been discussed with the planning board previously, including the reintroduction of a sidewalk extending down Chancel Avenue, and some new plant material, having an accessible access to the sidewalk area from the street there, and really related improvements, but that's it. The other proposed changes, it was subject to discussion last time, to paint the building, give it a fresh coat of paint and a fresh color, and to replace the awnings at the Chancel Avenue entrance, and then at the along the patio facing the tracks or facing the river with some new awnings. And I think there will be a separate application for a new sign, which actually is pretty much invisible. It's under the awning facing Chancel, and you literally need to be standing under the awning to see the sign over the door. But I don't believe that's been formally submitted yet as part of a separate sign application. So that will follow, and that's not actually part of this application tonight.
Thank you, Warren.
Yeah.
Jim, comments?
So we did review this and discuss it in detail at the last meeting. Not going to go back through those. I do believe the remaining outstanding issue is discussing color, as we left it from the last meeting. As Warren said, the sign does need a permit. I know it's underneath the awning, but it does need a permit. That's what the code says. So submitting that separately, I think, makes sense, and we'll make sure that that's done to code. So really, it's just a discussion amongst the planning board about the proposal for the color, and then considering an approval resolution if so desired.
I know there was a follow-up site visit made. Is anybody present that made that site visit? No. Jim, I do believe that we've received reports from both HAPAC and the WAC. Is that correct, CAB?
Yes.
Do you have those before you? Do you want to summarize them?
I don't have them before me, but I can find them if you give me a second.
Sure. Did everybody get those copies?
Yes.
Well, maybe I don't need to make Jim go through them. Did anybody have any questions or comments based on the submittals?
I mean, in summary, I think that the comments from the HAPAC and the CAB-WAC were pretty similar to the discussions we had at the last meeting. There's I don't know, maybe concerns a two word, but there was some concern about the color, being what it is, the dark color, the change from what it is that's there. But also discussions about how it's not necessarily a permanent change. It can be something that can change in the future. It's not, like a permanent change to the facade of the building, and that it is reversible. And really, just kind of, I think, again, in the same vein as what we discussed at the last meeting, generally speaking.
Okay.
And Melody, I would also observe at the last meeting, we were discussing a dark gray for the building, and the applicants have reconsidered and we're now actually showing a dark brown color, which is a slightly warmer tone, somewhat more brick-like than a gray.
Thank you, Warren. Any other planning board comments or questions? Okay, Jim, is there anyone here from the public?
Don't believe so, but if there is anyone, please let me know. Raise your hand or unmute your line. Not seeing anybody, Melody.
Okay, then I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So
So
moved.
moved. Second,
Michael, Craig, all those in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Okay, the public hearing is closed. Jim, I believe we have an approval resolution.
I do. Oh, I might have closed it out. Hold on. Hold on, I'm sorry. I think I closed out my file. With that, give me 1 second here. I have a lot of files to run through tonight, so they're in different places.
There we go.
On the screen, is it up on the screen now? Okay, I've got the right
Yep.
file. Okay. So for your consideration tonight, a draft approval resolution reaffirming the action is type 2 under seeker, for which reporting environmental review is precluded based upon submitted information, including reports from planning board members, HAPACs, CAB, WAC. We find that the work is consistent with the objectives of chapter 125. With respect to the application for a special use permit to authorize reactivation of the existing first floor non-residential use as a restaurant, find the proposed work and intended use is consistent with general standards for special use permits, and would grant the special use permit conditioned upon approval, conditioned upon site plan approval. With respect to site plan approval, in this resolution, we just want to note the number of permitted seats for the establishment must conform to the number permitted by Dutchess County Department of Health, and would find the proposed work and intended use to be consistent with Town Code Chapter 125, and approve the application inclusive of the materials and site plan by Warren Temple Smith Architects dated April 22nd, 2022. And will authorize the planning board chair to stamp sign the site plan upon the applicant's satisfaction of the conditions and requirements within 6 months of the calendar date adoption of the resolution, which includes submission of the required number of site plans, payment of outstanding fees, and receipt of all other approvals.
Thank you very much. Could I have a motion to approve the draft approval resolution?
So moved, Sean.
Thank you, Sean. Second.
Craig,
Thank you, Craig. I'll poll the board. Michael,
Aye.
Edna,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Craig,
aye.
and I'll vote aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck. Next up, Stephen and Tammy Kershon, 105 Daisy Lane, site plan and special use permit, changing the primary and accessory dwellings.
Hi, Melody. It's Zach from KDA here,
Hi,
representing.
Zach. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thanks. You want to refresh our memory?
Yeah. So since last time, it seemed like we were about at the finish line, but the board noticed that there was a field modification on site, a staircase and a loft had been kind of utilized. Since we had some loft space, the clients decided they wanted to utilize that space. So what we did is we resubmitted with that revised floor plan for the studio, which is under construction now, showing if you switch the next 2 pages, I'll show you where that is. Yep. And then this does not appear to be, is this the latest submission? I think we have one from
I believe so. Talks about the fixed windows.
yeah, but I think if we zoom out just a tad, I think I have one from May 9th. I just want to make sure the date's right. No, I'm not seeing the staircase.
Give me 1 second and I'll see if I can have something else.
Yeah, sent that to Gretchen, and I know she was forwarding it on to the board. So I have it open if you'd like me to share.
We don't, I control all the files during the public hearing, so that's, just give me 1 second. I'll see what I can do. You said May 9th, is that right?
Yep, May 9th.
Right. I've got it here, I think. Let me pull this up. Okay, see if that looks better.
Yep. Alrighty. Great. If you just zoom out just a tad, I'll just great. So you can see if you there we go. You see that there's a staircase that has been now shown in the main living space, and then if you go to the top left of the page, we have a little loft plan, just simply showing an open railing and a stair going up to a loft. So I believe the board's concern last time was, could this loft be used as a bedroom? We hope this shows that it's completely open to the room below. So we're not considering it a loft. We also have a bedroom. We also have a fixed window, so there's no emergency egress, similar to the way we handled the other questionable office in the main house. So I don't know if the board has any other further questions. I know we've kind of gone back and forth on all the little items. So I'm here to answer any questions, any further questions.
Thanks, Zach.
Yeah, no problem.
Jim, any questions, comments?
I believe from my perspective, everything's been addressed. The only outstanding question I have is whether or not the new plans have been given to County Health and they've signed off on them, or if that's a process that's going to be kind of ongoing. So I wanted to make sure the town's plans are the same as the county plans. I know the bedroom count things were all going to be the same, but we should have the same sets of plans on file.
Absolutely. Yes, we would ask that would be a condition of our approval.
And that was going to be the only thing I would say, Melody, is that if that wasn't done, it doesn't sound like it is, that could be a possible condition. If you're okay doing that, I think it's just a paperwork issue. It's not anything other than that, just making sure our plans are consistent. Mainly that the county gets the same plan we're looking at here tonight.
Yeah, we're working on an as-built for you because yeah, it's currently being constructed. So it'll be better than a proposed plan.
Planning board members?
How many offices are there?
Let me get that answer for you here. So we have one office in the main house that we've removed a door from and fixed the windows, and then we have,
I remember that one. Yeah.
Right, and then we have this little attic loft kind of space. So that would be the second one in a separate structure.
Okay.
So two total, one in each structure.
Nothing about the garage.
No, not for. There's going to be there will be storage space up there, but we're not proposing windows or any means of egress.
Okay.
There's also storage space in the house, right? That stair that we are looking at in the house goes up to a storage area.
Correct. That's a mechanical loft. I plan on blowing or keeping my fan coil units above the kitchen space. And so that's what that little access stair is going to.
Right. So there are basically three offices. There's one in the accessory dwelling and two in the house.
Well, we were asked to relabel those. So unless I'm missing it, I only believe we have one in the house currently.
Well, what's it labeled? You took the door off of it. It's still an office, right? I mean, not that it matters, but I remember two in the house.
So the second one inside of the house, if you just scroll down a little bit, that one we were asked to confirm that is a we've labeled it as a bedroom and renumbered all the bedrooms, so it's no longer an office and yet part of the entire bedroom count.
Okay.
Other comments? Is everybody happy with conditional approval? Jim, have you worked that into your resolution?
I have not, but I will. It would just be a line saying that it would be conditioned upon receiving information that the plans, the county health are consistent with what's on file at town hall.
Okay, do you want, all right, is everybody okay with that?
Yep.
Could I have a motion to, let me ask
Oh.
Jim, is there anybody here from the public wishing to make a comment?
Don't think so, but if so, please unmute your line. Raise your hand. Don't see anyone, Melody.
Could I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved, Edna.
Thank you, Edna. Second.
Second, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? The motion carries. Here is the draft approval resolution. Jim, do you want to just review it?
Can do that. Reaffirming the action as type 2 under seeker based upon the submitted information, including reports from the planning board members. That should say CAB, not WIC. On-site visits, their information, find the proposed work is consistent with objectives and regulations of chapter 125. With respect to the application for special use permit to authorize work, we find the proposed work is an intended use to be consistent with the general standards for special use permits and would grant the special use permit. Condition upon approval of the site plan. With respect to the application for site plan, find the work and intended use to be consistent with Town Code Chapter 125. We would approve the application inclusive of the materials and plans by Krista Dorsham Architecture PLLC, and I will provide an updated date there. And we will add a condition in as letter B stating that this is conditioned upon receiving information that the plans at County Department of Health are consistent with those on file with the town of Rhinebeck. Then we would authorize the planning board chair to stamp and sign the above cited site plan upon applicant's satisfaction of the 3 conditions there, which are submitting the correct number of plans, payment of outstanding fees, and receipt of all approval authorizations, certifications.
Okay, thank you, Jim. I have a motion to accept the draft approval resolution.
So moved. Michael?
Second, Edna.
Thank you, Edna. I'll pull the board. Michael,
Aye.
Craig,
Aye.
Edna,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
and I'll vote aye. Thank you very much. Thank you, Zach.
Thank you, board. Appreciate it.
Take care.
You too.
Next up, Vonderleith, 410 White Schoolhouse Road, site plan and special use permit, mining and reclamation renewal. I believe Mark is here.
I am.
Good evening, Mark.
Good evening.
Okay.
So at, last meeting, there was some requests for materials with regard to vehicle trips to the soil mine. Just prepared a document and sent it to the board for their consideration. And as I mentioned last meeting, I believe that we are complete with our New York State DEC review. They had some comments, they've been addressed, and I believe they're just awaiting approval from the town planning board for the special permit, since both permits are tied together.
Mark, it's John Lyons.
Hi, John.
Hi, how are you tonight?
Good.
Did DEC conduct an environmental review in connection with the mining permit review renewal?
Let's see, just let me check that, John. I'm just looking at documents that I submitted to DEC. No, I believe they rely on the town to do that, right? Because all my submission for a permit renewal was just a mining permit application, a mining narrative, and also this mining and reclamation plan that you see in front of you now. That's all that's been submitted to DEC.
Okay, so one of the reasons that DEC doesn't want to take action on the mining permit until the town makes a decision on the special use permit is because, they can't take action until the lead agency gets to a certain point in the secret process. Does that sound right?
Yes, it does.
Okay. We're looking right now and at the issue of cumulative impacts. And as you know, there's a mining permit renewal and construction of a new access road that is being proposed by another mining organization in close proximity to your client's project. And right now, the planning board has asked me to look into the issue of whether cumulative impacts need to be assessed as part of this review. And we're in the midst of doing that. We're not prepared to give the board an answer tonight, but we hope to be able to do that in between now and the next planning board meeting.
Okay. Understood. Is, John, and to the board, any other additional materials are required from this applicant?
Is the board happy with the short form EAF for this? That's the only thing I would think of.
Planning board members? Jim?
Well, fairly or not, I'm kind of leaning on John to work with me through this. We can probably, I think we can probably work off that. I'm not sure, but if John thinks we can work with that document, I can make it work. And if not, we can always ask for additional materials if needed, I would think.
All right, well, let's take a look and see what the outcome is of the cumulative impacts evaluation that we're going to do. I presume that, Mark, has the short form EAFs been used in the previous renewal applications by your client?
That's correct, John.
Okay.
So John, I was gonna say, the only question I have, John, I think you and I had talked about circulating for lead agency. Is that something we need to do and we'll identify who those people are and get that?
I think that's something that we can move ahead tonight. I would circulate, obviously based on the conversation with Mark this evening, DEC should be included as an involved agency. And I would send, I don't know, is there any permit required, Mark, from the highway department for the driveway or for your curb cut?
No, this has been the access point for the soil mine for the last, the last three permit renewals that I've done, John. So that's 15 years. So that, okay, it's an existing access point. And actually, I know we touched on the mining access point a while back, because the northern portion of the mine was actually a subdivision that we had done, I think it's in 2018, that created building lots for both it's lot 1A and lot 1B that's shown as part of that, as part of the part of this mining plan. So I think that was addressed at that time also.
Okay. Are there any other involved agencies to your knowledge besides DEC?
None. And historically it's just been New York State DEC in the town of Rhinebeck. And just noting, John, that, typically in this case for the mining permit, the renewal of the special permit has been made, coincidental with the DEC permit. So it's a 5-year period for this particular application.
Okay, thank you. So I think, Jim, we can circulate to DEC and get that going. And I think, Jim, you mentioned to me that the county referral is definitely out and may be back.
Yes. I know it went out. If it's back, I'd have to double check. It is back. Yeah, we received it back, and It was considered a local concern with some comments that we'll go through.
Okay.
Mostly related to traffic. Well, we can just go through right here. It's one sentence. It's related to the increased concerns of truck traffic. Again, kind of coming back to the discussion we've had of cumulative impact of the truck traffic. They have the same general concern and suggested a basic truck study. Mark has provided us with information on the truck counts coming in and out, hours of operation, things like that. The letter that was submitted. But again, this kind of ties into our discussion of cumulative impact that we've been having.
Okay, great. If you could share a copy of the county response letter with me, that would be terrific. Or is it in the database?
I believe so. I'll double check. I'll make sure you get a copy and we'll put it in there.
Thank you.
Can I ask a couple of questions just off the top of my head?
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah, Mark, is any additional mining on this site being proposed other than what has already been approved by DEC?
No.
Okay.
I note that, when you looking at this plan, there's two hatched areas, one with skewed lines, going through a major portion of the property that's already been reclaimed, and then there's a boulder line on the outside, and it has with a circle inside the circle, that's LM, that's the life of mine.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see that, and then this mine extent, the land, the ultimate permit extends, a bit to the south, but it's the intention of this applicant that the only there may be some additional mining that'll take place in the hatched area that's dotted, and all that to occur is just some enlargement of the ponds. There's a note to the right side. It says, the intended use of this property is to remain is currently agricultural, and it's to remain agricultural. And so, as I mentioned before, the northern portion, on the northeast and northwest portion of this mine are currently the residences of the owners of the mine. So no, there's, just to recap, this mine has been primarily used for processing material from the Lobotsky soil mine to the north, and that's been included in the truck traffic generation that I said, regarding this application. That soil mine is the intention for Vonderleaf is probably to finish that this year. That mine will be complete and completely reclaimed, and so it's just a little bit of surface mining and some subsurface mining on just a small remaining portion of this property that will occur. And I also note, the owner and applicant Rich Vonderleaf was on the last meeting. Just to reiterate that no outside sales are taking place for the sale of sand and gravel to other parties. It's just strictly the material that's generated from the soil mine is just used for the Vonderleefs and their excavation business. That's it.
Thank you.
Michael, did you have another question?
Well, can I interject?
Sure.
So is that information, Mark, in the application in writing anywhere, the information that you just gave us in response to Michael's question?
It may not be, John, and I can certainly clarify. I can enhance the narrative that was included with the application to include that information.
That would be really helpful if you could do that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Michael, did you have another question?
No, I think Mark pretty well covered what I was also going to ask about. So I think he pretty well covered it. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from other planning board members? Comments? Okay. Jim, is there anyone here from the public?
So please raise your hand or turn on your screen. I don't see anyone, Melody.
Okay, so I think based on what John has shared with us and his hope to be able to review this before our next meeting, I think we're ready for a motion to continue the public hearing. Someone willing to make that motion?
So moved, Melody. I don't know to when.
Gretchen will tell us. Gretchen?
June 20th.
Okay. So motion to continue the public hearing until June 20th. Motion made by Edna. Is there a second?
Second, Michael.
Thank you, Michael. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Last up this evening, before we go into referrals, is Grassmere House, 29 Mill Road, site plan, special use permit, wetlands permit, minor subdivision, country Inn 2. And I see we've got a whole team here.
Good evening, Melanie. How are you? Good evening, board members.
Well,
Nicholas Willis with Keenan Bean on behalf of the applicant Grassmere House. I'm joined tonight by Tom LaRue on behalf of the applicant Soho House, John Montaigne with GPI, and Richard Nye of Streamgo, who is designing the wastewater treatment system. This is an application, as you know, for amended site plan approval, wetlands and subdivision. It's a continuation of a public hearing. We submitted our application in February and have appeared at your board's February, March, and April meetings, as well as appeared several times before HAPAC and the Conservation Advisory Committee, both of which sent favorable reports and recommendations to your board. We've also responded to all the outstanding consultants' comments, including most recently on our substantive April 4th submission. And we've advanced discussions with the third-party agencies, of which we have updated you previously, and we'll give you an update in a moment as to the current status of those reviews. With all that in mind, I would respectfully suggest, and I know the board had its secret discussion on May 2nd, that you'll continue, that this application is in a position for the board to advance its review and potentially, I think, make a decision on the application at your meeting in June. And we are in a position where we would request the board consider closing the public hearing on the site plan and the wetlands application permit, and authorize your staff to prepare approval resolutions if that's where the board is inclined to go. With respect to the third-party agency reviews, with respect to water in the village of Rhinebeck, we reported that we have had discussions with their staff about the plans, and that was going to be placed for the board's village board's consideration. The engineer had some additional comments. They wanted some revisions made to the plans and comments, and those have been provided, and we've received a comment letter today. And we'll be making another submission to the village engineer for their review, and hope that that will be placed on their June agenda for consideration. I will point out that the village water discussions have advanced significantly further than they had been in the past when this board has previously approved the site plan applications, and we think that this is an appropriate condition of approval. Of obtaining the approval from the village of Rhinebeck can still be made a condition, as you have made in the prior 5 times this project was before your board. With respect to the Dutchess County Department of Health and the wastewater treatment system and the water infrastructure, our representatives, Josh O'Connor from GPI, Tom LaRue from Soho House, and Richard Nye from Streamgo met with Mr. Pearson at the site on May 11th. They had a substantive review of the application materials. And Richard will go into this in a bit more details, and they can answer any questions you may have, but it's our understanding that the health department, who is familiar with these types of systems as they've approved in other locations, subject to the typical design review that occurs when it goes through the permitting, had no substantive issues with the proposed wastewater treatment system. With the New York State Department of Transportation, we've made a further submission in response to initial comments we received, and we have received what we believe to be the final round of comments that we will be submitting a response back to them by the end of this week, beginning of next week, and advancing those discussions. We've also completed the wetland delineation that the board had requested. That was completed about a week and a half ago. We will be submitting that to you within the next 2 weeks so that your staff can review that in advance of your June meeting. And all of those third-party agency reviews are items that in prior reviews by this board, you had granted the site plan approval subject to those matters being reviewed by the third-party agency. So I would suggest that we are further along in the process than you were several years ago when the board previously granted approval. The last item I'd like to comment on, and Jim, if we could put this up on the screen, is the subdivision. You may recall that the applicant was speaking with the Winnicke Land Trust with respect to the modifying the conservation easement. And that was because we were proposing to move the westerly boundary line further to the west, and that would have included some of the lands that were imposed by a conservation subdivision. We were proposing to grant an additional 28 acres in the area of along Mill Road by Daz Lane to also be imposed with a conservation subdivision. And as we went deeper into the discussions with the Winnicke Land Trust, it became apparent that this was becoming more complex than either of us had realized or thought was appropriate, especially given some of the tax considerations, as well as the fact that we were asking for two separate types of conservation easements, one for Mr. Mensch's residential property, of which it's currently on, as well as then imposing one on the Grassmere commercial property. So the Winnicke Land Trust had then suggested that given that we no longer have the need for the moving the lot line and modifying the conservation subdivision, which was originally, if you recall, the genesis of which was locating some cabins in that area. Those cabins are no longer proposed. So we both mutually agreed that these discussions did not need to be advanced at this time. And it was suggested that we not pursue or continue those discussions at this time. So we are not in discussions. It was a mutual agreement, just in recognition that we didn't need to be focusing anyone's efforts on there. So the revised subdivision you have before you does not alter the westerly lot line. Our subdivision has become even more simpler than it was before. We're only doing the lot merger, the 10-acre parcel to the north, you may recall, that is being merged into the 520 plus acres now. And then, Jim, if you can just scroll down a bit to the south, you'll see that we've now, keeping the main westerly property line, we have moved the southerly property line, what I like to say the equivalent of 10 acres to the south, so that we now have lot 1, which is the Grassmere House main property of 250 acres. And then the remaining, I think, is 273 acres would be lot 2 below that new line that we have to the south. So the subdivision now is just the lot merger of the 10 acres. We're respecting the westerly property line, not impacting the conservation subdivision. And we've just extended the southern property line a bit more to the south. So that is our revised subdivision. We will be submitting that formally later this week to the board. And that is why I've suggested the subdivision application hearing should not be closed, but the other two should be. Also, board members, we are aware of the board's May 2nd review of the environmental impact, environmental assessment form and your review of part 2 that you held at your May 2nd meeting. We are aware of a couple of the discussions and comments that you have, and we're certainly prepared to answer any that you may wish to ask us tonight. But I also thought it would be helpful for John Montaigne from GPI to go through some of the larger themes that you had questions about. And before I do that, I was going to ask Richard Nye from StreamGo just to explain to you the wastewater treatment system. As we saw, there were some comments and questions about how that would work and how that might have any potential impacts to the environment that both Richard and John might answer as well. So unless you have any comments on what I've spoken about previously, Melody, I was going to ask Richard to sort of introduce the wastewater treatment system to you and offer an explanation of it.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you, Richard.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me on. So yeah, StreamGo, like to present to you guys, we're a design build company that specializes in water and wastewater treatment systems. We're currently doing the Belfield project not too far from here, and also we've completed one over at Silo Ridge, I'm sure everyone's heard. So we actually have 4 projects right now in Dutchess County, one in Orange County, one in Ulster, one in Sullivan County. So we just opened a new office in Newburgh, so we're kind of around the area a lot, very understanding of all the steps of the approval process, and then also implementing and startup. We're familiar with the DEC and DOH requirements, and also Dutchess County Water and Wastewater Authority. So all those are being consulted through the approval process. And just so you guys have a little understanding about the system itself, what's being installed here is, what's considered to be best in class technology right now. It's an MBR plant, so it's a membrane filtration plant. Starts with some biological treatment and then a very fine filtration process. And so that allows us to produce water that meets most drinking water quality standards. So very high quality discharge, and that's why we're allowed to discharge to kills like this that would then ultimately go to the Hudson. So very robust system, full redundancy in it. So anything fails in it pumps wise, there's always duplicity. It's fully automated as well. It has full remote monitoring, so you can operate the plant from anywhere in the world from any kind of iPad or phone. So when you do have alarming, you can see what's going on and react very quickly with it. Yeah, so a lot of security as well. We have 4 levels of security into the control system, so we don't have to worry about anybody working their way into the system at all from a hacker stance. So yeah, we try and cover everything. We are operators of plants. We operate. I think we carry right now about 40 operators in our company. So yeah, it's a little bit of background on us. The system that's going in here is very similar to the one that's over at Silo Ridge, a much smaller version of the technology that's being used at Belfield, and pretty much an exact match with the one down in Ulster County, just north of Newburgh. So not sure if anyone had any distinct questions about the system at all.
I have a question.
Sure.
You mentioned that the water that's admitted will be pure. Will it be that state before it goes into, I think there was discussion of a holding pond before that goes into the kill? Am I correct?
Yeah, there'd be a constructed wetland that we'll discharge to, and the water's of that quality going into the wetland.
I think that's terrific.
Yeah, it's going to help the area. There's a lot of phosphorus loadings from traditional plants in the area that have caused a lot of algae outbreaks on the Hudson and other areas in Dutchess County. So these systems are removing all that, worry of any type of nutrients going in.
Will your company be the continuous operator, maintainer?
We would hope so, but we'll probably be out for tender and we'll see which way it goes.
But it will be.
Yeah.
It will be a company such as yours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Included with our delivery.
It will be
model.
their.
Yeah.
It will be their company, Edna. To put that, no question. I'm not tendering this out. It's their system, soup to nuts. That's why we picked them right through the operation of it.
Thank you, Tom, for that explanation. Edna, did that answer your question?
It did. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, thank you, Richard. And
I guess I shouldn't have let Rich know that at the beginning. But
it's okay.
I think he's pleased nonetheless.
Yeah.
So, John, I'm going to ask John Montaigne from GPI. John, I don't know if you want to start off with any other comments or observations on the wastewater treatment system, but if you can just talk to some of the general comments that came up during the board's secret review to help move that discussion along, that would be appreciated.
Right. So just so everybody knows, Nick did share with me the notes that came out of the meeting that you all had to go through part 2 of the fully AF. And so I'm just going to hit on some of the points that really relate to the engineering. I'm going to start on section 3, which talks about water bodies, stormwater discharges, things like that. On 3A, the comment was, well, the stormwater practices, become water bodies. Are they technically water bodies? And I think I can kind of summarize quite a few things with stormwater. We have just recently completed all of the field investigations with CPL in all of our proposed stormwater practices. The original stormwater report was based on just soils data from soils reports. And now that we have the real data, that analysis will now be updated and the final version of that stormwater model will be completed. But what has come out of that is the fact that the areas that we have are suitable areas for stormwater management. All of those management practices are either infiltration, which is the first goal, try to infiltrate into the ground, or secondly, dry or wet basins, which are also intended to drain out and dry completely. So they will not be, open ponds that hold water. These are not old-fashioned stormwater basins that you used to see with 4 bays and wet ponds in the bottoms of them. That's not the practices anymore.
Nick, could I just ask a question? This is not your formal response to our review, is that correct? You will be responding in writing?
We will be, yes. We were going to be working with Jim and John. It suggested that we have a meeting where we could better understand and clarify those questions and put a formal response together, yes.
Right, so I just like to keep it at a sort of general review tonight, so we don't go into in depth with every question.
Understood.
No, that wasn't our intent. It was understood.
I do understand that, Melody.
Okay,
The
I just wanted
stormwater was kind of a big one, so I wanted to make sure everybody knew how we had progressed on that, and that
I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that you will be responding formally.
Right. So I guess the other thing is too, there were questions about erosion control, things like that. And as everybody knows, we have to design all of our systems based on DEC standards and soil erosion, and there will be inspections through construction, and all of that is covered. Though, as was mentioned, the wetlands delineation work was just completed over the past 2 weeks. The boundaries of the wetlands have not moved in any substantial way. As a matter of fact, one of the wetland areas that had been originally identified by Bagden near the stone barns is actually not there. Our wetland delineator was curious as to why they had picked a sort of an upland area and included it. So that mapping will be coming, and from that we will update the impact areas and everything else, and update the table for buffer impacts. We also then delineated some additional lands out towards Mill Road, out by Dawes Lane, and that will show up as well. That was part of the mapping that had never been completed before. There were questions on the heating systems. I did want to point that out, that any of the heating systems that this facility uses will be very small compared to the thresholds that are in the seeker documents, and they'll in no way meeting any of the thresholds for air permits, air resource requirements, or any of that, well underneath those thresholds. The last one that I saw really was talking a little bit about threatened and endangered species. And I think as you recall, both the Bagden analysis and our wetlands and field biologists did do threatened and endangered species review. That was all documented in the original EIS, GEIS, and then in the subsequent studies. And there are no habitats that will be affected by this. And we'll give some feedback on that. There was a question regarding agricultural soils, impacts to those. And as you see by the plan, the only infringement on the existing agricultural fields are on the fringes. The existing roads that go around the southern parking area, which is not a large field. And one of the most important things to note is the best soils for this whole site are on the upper plateau, up where the 10 acre has been added to the north. And that is not a development area. So that prime ag land is actually protected now because it's part of this project, and no longer subject to the prior proposal for a house and a house lot there. I believe that's really the technical ones that were in there, Melody. So that's all I'm going to comment on for tonight.
Thank you, John. And Melody, what I'd like to suggest is that with the board's permission, that because some of these responses don't lend themselves to a writing, it's more of a dialogue and a conversation and pointing out where something is and then answering questions that would naturally arise from that. So it's more of a fluid conversation than a letter exchange, is that we meet virtually this week with John and Jim and sort of have that more detailed discussion, so that when John and Jim meet with the board next, which I presume would be at your June 6th meeting to review SECRA, that you have the benefit of those responses, and we can then supplement it with formal written responses to the extent that's necessary for the record as well at John and Jim requests. Does that seem reasonable?
I would ask John and Jim if they think that's reasonable.
We're both reasonable people.
John, you're muted.
Al, I don't know, Jim, are you going to be prepared in time to be able to have that discussion?
Well, I'm not going to have everything pulled together, but if we want to have a preliminary discussion of identifying where things are, we can do that. I do need a little time to pull together. it's a little bit of a chicken egg in my mind, a little bit of this, but yeah, I mean, Nick, we can coordinate offline and see what makes sense. I think John, and I, if that works for you, John. I mean, I don't know. I could talk, but I'm not gonna have anything fully prepared by this week. Still pulling stuff together.
No, and I think we might be, let's talk offline, but I think we might be able to direct you to that information pretty readily because we're familiar with it, so we can save you some time there as well. So maybe it's a two-step process. A brief one just to identify things and then a more substantive the following week. But let's talk about that offline.
Yeah, why don't we schedule something offline? We can figure that out. That sounds good.
Thank you.
Okay.
So Melody, is there any additional information or documents the board would like to ask us tonight while we're here or would appreciate receiving from us?
I will ask the board. Planning board members, are there any questions, comments?
I have none.
Okay. All right. Jim, comments?
No, I think they've mostly been kind of covered. Like I say, we have to go through the seeker discussion. Just kind of answer those remaining questions based on our seeker review from the other night. And yeah, that's really it. I guess, again, Nick has asked for kind of the consideration of the conditional approval, so the planning board will have to think about that. I don't know if we talk about it tonight or just think about it and we'll kind of see where we go. But
I think we can take that under advisement. Nick, did you or your team, Tom, anyone, get any indication from Dave Pearson as to how long he thought the Department of Health review might take?
Tom, do you want to speak to that or?
You're muted, Tom.
Tom's trying to, but he's muted.
Yeah, I got a funny 2 to 12 months. So I'm hoping for the 2-part and not the 12-part. So my understanding, and Rich knows the process more, right? It ultimately starts with DEC, goes to DOH, and then ultimately goes back to DEC. What I explained to Dave is his colleague is very familiar with the systems of the other project that Richard had mentioned. So we left Wednesday's meeting essentially with Dave going to collect information from his colleague. What we were expecting or hope to expect is that they will send a preliminary, I keep calling it a head nod email to you guys, essentially saying, yes, we're familiar with the system. Yes, it's a proper system XYZ. And in due course, it'll run through the permitting process. So that's essentially where we got with Dave. I don't physically have the email that he said he was going to send today, but we do expect it hopefully here in the next day or so.
But that was on the sewer, right? Wasn't on the water necessarily. They're running on 2 separate tracks.
That's on the correct 2 separate tracks. We did talk about that too, that they would be 2 separate applications with him, obviously, because they run separate courses. And we talked through both scenarios.
Okay.
With the focus, obviously, right now in my mind, the village water, essentially that's still in with the village, right? So we need to satisfy the village first. Once we satisfy them, we would then go to health and the other DOT, I believe is the other interested agency for that scope.
Okay.
Melanie, I can give you a quick update too on the water. The comments that came back from the village really now are the fine tuning. They want to see some additional documentation and detailing on all the service laterals that come off the new main that we're putting in. We'll make sure that the connections to all the hydrants are in, all the valves are correct, fine detailing, notes on pavement restoration, lawn restoration. So we're in the final stretch of those final drawings. And once Randy from the consultant engineer signs off on it, that's when they'll go to the DOH so that the DOH knows that the village's engineer is on, has reviewed everything and everything's copacetic.
Okay. Planning board members, any last comments or questions?
So
Jim, is there anyone?
How are we now leaving this in terms of when this applicant is hoping for approval and what's going to happen before that time?
I don't know that we're in a position to have that full conversation tonight. I'd rather wait to see how John and Jim make it out in their next couple of meetings that they're having. I think that will give us more information.
I mean, I understand that the applicant wants to move through the process quickly and the board wants that too, but it's premature at this moment, in my opinion, tonight, to be thinking about approval when the board has not even issued its determination of significance yet on the on the matter of whether there's an SEIS required. So we need to keep moving forward, but we have to take things one step at a time. We need to get seeker addressed first, and then look at whether there are other, anything else in terms of special use permit, site plan, and wetlands that the board's going to want before the board can consider being in a position to think about conditional approval. That's my opinion.
So
Thank you, John.
I appreciate that, John, but we have been before the board and made substantive applications. I'm not aware of any outstanding request for information and believe we've provided all that information. So if I'm understanding you correctly, it's just a matter then of a board processing and discussing that, correct?
No, I don't know the answer to that. I have to rely on Jim with regard to the completeness of the information. I'm just talking about the process. And again, I understand that you want to get to approval. The board wants to move this along in the process, but we have to go step by step.
So we have some awareness. What do you see as the sort of a timing for the next steps?
I don't know at the time, we have to resolve see what information you're going to be providing. Now, Jim has to pull together the questions that were going to be asked at the EA, coming out of the discussion about the EAF. We have to get that material to you. We've got to get the responses back, and the board needs to crunch the responses and see how they fit into the rest of the completion of the EAF, and then decide what, and on the more substantive matter, look at what the EAF Part 3 is going to contain, and then ultimately what the determination of significance is going to be. And that's something that could happen quickly if everything, if all the information that's submitted is such that the board determines that it doesn't lead to the identification of moderate to large impacts that the board deems to be significant, but that analysis needs to take place.
So thank you, and I appreciate that. From our perspective, we have provided that information, and
I think,
well, you can't have provided it when we haven't asked for it yet.
Well,
I understand the desire to provide it is there.
I think you two have agreed that you're with Jim going to be meeting in the near term future, and I'd like you to take up that conversation then. We're not going to settle it tonight. Tom?
Can I ask one question? At this point, right, and this is a personal question going through this process, and I ultimately have to go report back to other people, right? And everything that I'm hearing is that this ultimately is going to get dragged out longer. And I guess should I be going back to my superiors and basically saying that we should revert back to the 2015 plan, because essentially that's a plan that we could act upon, right? And I think you've all seen we're putting the commitment in to try to clean up the site and inch this along, but the dollars in the options of me inching things along and making improvements at the site, that runs out at some point. So I'm just trying to look for some guidance. Like if we say this is going to drag on another 6-7 months, my suggestion is going to be, let's go back to the 2015 plan, stop the bleeding. And I'm just looking for at least some kind of where this is going, just from, again, me being responsible to then recommend things to security, et cetera.
Well, I personally can't answer that question. I don't personally see it dragging on 6, 7, 8 months, but
I have to say, I object to the characterization of it dragging. The board is working really hard. They're crunching a lot of information. And I appreciate the desire to move forward quickly, but you need to appreciate the position that the board and the board members are in as well. The board this is not the only application in front of the board. And there are a lot of moving parts to this application, and the board has to be as careful and prudent with regard to this application as it is with everyone else's, because everybody has to be treated fairly and treated the same. So, I understand your need to report to your superiors, but it feels, framing the discussion like that feels like green mail.
Poor choice of word. Sorry. That's why I'm not an attorney.
I have a question. I have a question, Melody.
Yes, Edna.
What has been proposed is that Jim and John meet with the applicant as representatives of the board. How about if there is a special meeting of the board so that the full board can be part of that? So that questions that members of the board may have are addressed then.
So
To me, it's a step and be cleaner and also involve the entire board.
the preliminary idea was, we did discuss this, 2 weeks ago, and I'm trying to pull together that information, try and fill the hole. And then obviously if you, as board members had additional questions, we could get to it then. I feel like it'd be easier for everyone to react to some information that's provided than maybe have the open discussion on that. And I'm hoping to pull that together in the next, week or so, at least pull together the information that I think is there. And I'm going to work with Nick to ensure that what I find is what they think is available. And get that out to all of you, in advance. And then it's a matter of, yeah, exactly, Andy. How do we schedule it? It doesn't necessarily have to follow this track system. We did the initial seeker review off of the track for the Grassmere house 2 weeks ago. So I am hoping to pull it together, but it's been 2 weeks and it's a little bit of info and there's just a lot of moving parts, as John said. So we're moving as quick as we can. I'm really trying to. And that, as John said, it's a big one because the board has to decide if you want to do a supplemental EIS or not, which has been a discussion for, a couple of years that I've been involved when the previous application came in. So I'm hoping to get all those answers to you. Hopefully it'll, answer all the questions that remain. If not, we'll get that additional detail and hopefully wrap up that part of this so that the board can determine, if the SEIS is needed or not.
And honestly, Edna, I think it's going to move faster with the structure that we're talking about. So that Jim can focus the info. I mean, the idea is that Jim's going to be able to sort of focus the informational questions down to exactly what was raised at the EAF, and then we can sort some of that with the applicant, and then just come back to the planning board members with answers, and without having to, coordinate a meeting. In the meantime, I mean, if you wanted to join the meeting, we're not trying to keep people out. If you wanted to join the meeting, you'd be welcome to join the preliminary meeting. But I think from a process standpoint, I think if we can move it along according to the plan that's been hatched, I think it's going to move faster.
I would like to join the meeting and perhaps others would like to join the meeting.
I will ask Jim and John to work out the details of the meeting with Nick, and then we can figure out how to open it up for others to at least listen in.
Sure.
I'd like to add something just to what Nick spoke about earlier. Nick, you gave us a very good overview of the number of times we've been meeting with you since you've come into this project, and that is all true. Many members of the planning board may not be aware of the fact that you and your team have scheduled, and we have agreed to meet with you in pre-conference meetings almost every month in between the regular meetings. So I hasten to say that because I don't want there to be any suggestion that the planning board or the members of the planning board team have been in any way not accommodating to your desire to meet on a very regular basis. So
I endorse that. That's absolutely right. It's been a cooperative process. And what you're hearing tonight is just us believing that we've made a number of substantive comments and that we're pretty far along towards getting to where we need to be, and recognizing that the board needs to complete its review. So we're trying to find a way to move that along and condense it. And so when Tom made a reference earlier, he was talking about the process in general, not the way this application has been reviewed or treated by the board and staff. It's been a good cooperative process. And as you mentioned, Melody, not just with your board, but with a number of times HAPAC had met with us outside of the meeting and special meetings. So I don't want to leave any impression that we're not grateful or appreciative or mindful of it. As Tom said, there's just some business aspects of it that we need to have on terms of the scheduling before we commit investments to repairing a lovely but building that needs some TLC sooner than later. And we'd like to get it there. So it's just trying to make those meld. And maybe if I could ask could you tentatively put us on for June 6th for the secret discussion? And if you don't need it, you don't need it, but at least it's there as a placeholder. And I'm hoping that our interim discussions with Jim, John, and any planning board members would help advance those discussions.
I would defer to council. I'm not in a position to make that decision.
For me, for scheduling, I mean, you can put, if you do that, if you can put it in as a placeholder, and if we're ready, we'll be ready to go. And if we're not ready, then it'll be moved, it'll have to be moved to the next meeting.
And there's a lot on the agenda for the 6th, so there's a lot on every agenda, it seems. So we just need to keep that in mind. I don't think the process will be as long as the previous, run through that we did. It's only some number of questions, but again, it's just something to keep in mind.
Understood.
It'd probably go on I would assume we'd put it on at the end of the meeting after the public hearings and things, but yeah. I mean, I'll pull the materials together. Again, it's just a matter of getting the materials together and timing with planning board meetings and other things. It's really.
All right, we can do that with the understanding that if we aren't ready, we're not going to take it up.
Appreciated, understood. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? I hesitate to ask from the planning board. Okay. Jim, is there anyone here from the public by chance?
Oh, please let me know. Raise your hand and turn on your screen.
All right. So we are now have a motion to continue the public hearing. Are we saying June 6th? Is that what we're saying? Somebody help me out here.
Well, the seeker is related, but not necessarily the public hearing, but I guess we can because
do we have two resolutions then before us or just one tonight?
There are no resolutions tonight.
No, I mean, are we continuing both the public hearing? Tell me what we're doing here.
Yeah, well, the public hearing has to be continued and we're going to schedule the seeker. We could do both. I mean, if you want to put this on,
There haven't been a lot of comments, so there should be no problem with continuing the public hearing at the next meeting.
Okay, that would be the June 6th meeting, not going out the month as we have been, correct?
Right, it would take us off the track, but the focus of the 6th will be on the seeker form, and then maybe there'll be some ancillary discussions.
All right. So could I have that motion, please?
So moved, Edna.
Thank you, Edna. Second.
Sean.
Sean, thank you. All those in
Second,
favor?
Sean.
Thank you.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you. Good evening, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
We now have 3 town board referrals before us to wrap up the evening. The first is called the Hamlet, and this is the workforce housing project that has been under discussion with the town board. So I don't know who's going to take the lead here this evening. Is it you, Andy?
Madam Chair, this is Ken Carney. If you don't mind, I'll take the lead. Open up.
Not a problem. Take it away, Ken.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Ken Carney. My son and I, my son and partner, Sean, are partnering with Dan Martin and the Housing Partnership on this workforce housing development between Astor Drive and Rhine Cliff Road. The Carney Group develops. We have a construction arm that we build, but most importantly, we manage all of our own properties. We started the company in Dutchess County over 30 years ago. And for any questions regarding our hands-on management style, I encourage any members of the board to speak to Dutchess County Planning, the commissioner, or any assistant commissioners. What we're seeking to do is to apply the recently enacted workforce housing overlay zone. The town recognized the need for workforce housing to create housing at various income levels, various rents, and they adopted a workforce housing overlay zone. This property meets the criteria for the workforce housing zone, and what you have before you tonight is a referral from the town board. The project consists of 80 units, a mix of 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms. 79 are rental units. 1 is a superintendent's unit. Our management style includes an on-site management office, and we also have a superintendent who lives there 7 days a week. And that's our eyes and ears when the management office is closed. We currently have 22 developments similar to this, mainly throughout the Hudson Valley. And we're very excited about the possibility of working here in the town of Rhinebeck. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to the project engineer, Andy Learn, who'll talk about some of the site-specific details, and then he can turn it over to our architect, Mario Salpepi, who can highlight some of the architectural features. Andy?
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, so the site, like Ken said, is located along the western boundary of the village in the town between Astor Drive and Rhinecliff Road. It's about 23 acres, it's all wooded right now, consisting of some steep slopes throughout the site with rock outcroppings. We do have wetlands, federal wetlands, town wetlands in the northern portion of the site, as well as along the southwestern portion of the property. There's also a small section of the southwestern portion of the property that does have some floodplain in it from the Rhinebeck Kill where it crosses underneath Rhinecliff Road. The wetlands, primarily in the south end of the site, will not be disturbed. The access to the site, we have a access easement over Wells Manor Drive for primary access to the site, which leads out to Astor Drive. That will require disturbance to the wetland in the northern portion of the property, and we have filled out a wetland disturbance application for that. The access road, we have two accesses proposed based on working with the town board, one from Astor Drive and another from Rhinecliff Road. The access to Rhinecliff was added for 2 reasons. Based on town board input. One was to provide pedestrian access actually down to Rhinecliff and then eventually to the village. And also they were looking for access, a second means of access to the site. In talking to the DOT about that, the DOT has indicated their preference to keep that as an emergency only access out to Rhinecliff Road, where vehicles would enter the site only. I know in previous discussions with the board that may be something that we need to look at. So we're open to suggestions and listen to your comments later on how you want to handle that. As far as the site itself, one more thing. We do have, the site is archaeologically sensitive. Based on EAF mapper findings, it was indicated to be such. So we did have a phase 1A and 1B archaeological study performed as requested by OPRHP. And we submitted those reports along with some additional information. Those reports identified an area just to the west of the proposed access road down at Rhinecliff Road that is archaeologically sensitive. It was identified as the Darling Historic Site, and basically what we provided was an avoidance plan to prevent disturbance of that site. Our improvements are staying away from that area. We'll have to provide some fencing around that to prevent future disturbance of that. Getting into the site plan itself, as Ken said, we're proposing 80 units in 4 separate buildings, one of which will have a community room. Some of the amenities that the town board asked us to look into and we were providing is a pergola, playground, on-site walking trails, some planters for community gardens, and I think I'm forgetting something here. Yeah, and the patio. There's the patio areas with seating between the buildings for outdoor use. The buildings are 2 stories, all of which are walkout basements in the back, which is the west side of the buildings, so for a lawn area and access to outdoor spaces. We did our best to try to make the site fit with the character of Rhinebeck as best we could, based on the buildings that the funding agency actually is looking for and their criteria. So that's kind of how we came up with the kind of the articulating buildings. We are also a little limited based on the site topography. The steep slopes are a bit of a challenge to kind of fit these buildings in place and make the site work. As far as parking, all the parking spaces will be porous pavement. We're required to have 120 spaces. We're proposing 129, so we're a little bit over, but just about where the code is calling for it. The stormwater for the rest of the site, along with porous pavement, we're proposing bioretention filters, some stormwater swales, and a dry detention pond at the southern portion of the site. Other utilities will be fairly easily accessible, mostly from we expect from the northern end of the site. The village wastewater treatment plant is actually just off of the other side of Wells Manor Lane, so that's a fairly short connection for us to make. And then water would also likely come through Astor Drive. We have been in contact with the village and their village engineer. They're working on a capacity analysis for us. We're still waiting results of that, but based on preliminary discussions with them, we do expect them to have capacity to be able to serve the project. I think that pretty much covers everything that I had to talk about. I'll turn it over to Mario, the project architect, to kind of look at the renderings and the floor plans.
Thanks, Andy. Good evening. I'm Mario Salpepi from Capola Associates. I am the project architect. Overlapping some of what Ken and Andy may have already said, we have 4 buildings, 20 apartments per building, for a total of 80 units. There are 18 1-bedrooms, 44 2-bedrooms, and 18 3-bedroom apartments. The entry side of the buildings is the 2-story side, as Andy mentioned, from the parking lot and sidewalks. Each building has 2 entrances, which serve 10 apartments, 4 on the main level, 4 on the upper level, and 2 on the lower level at the rear. You can see the rendering here. We went through some iterations with the town board members in an attempt to comply with Rhinebeck's design guidelines. The facades themselves, you can see there, articulate in 3 different planes, which is not easy to see in the black and white drawings. We're using fiberglass shingles on the roof, fiber cement horizontal siding, and fiber cement board and batten vertical siding, along with aluminum standing seam porch roofs and shed roofs. You can see some of the trim work on the columns, trim work on the windows, and the coloration. We also worked with the town board. They requested more muted earth tones. So you could see here the beige and dark brown colors in the fiber cement siding. The project itself, the building envelopes will be Energy Star certified. The project will be LEED certified. Everything on the project, all fixtures, equipment will be Energy Star certified. Obviously, we'll be at a high level as far as energy ratings go. We will be all electric, which at this point is the state mandate. There will be no fossil fuels on the project. And obviously, we look forward to working with the board and the committee for any sort of revisions to these elevations that they may request. Thank you.
Is that it? Ken, Andy, is that
Yes,
it?
it is.
Presentation?
Yes, it is, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Jim, do you want to kind of review the steps that we're looking at here? There's a bit of a back and forth, I understand. Maybe you want to clarify that, and then I think we'll open it up for questions and comments from planning board members.
Sure. So, so as Melody said, there is a process. My recommendation, just before I mention that, is that the planning board review this referral, and it is a referral from the town board. This is not an official site plan submission at this time, but review this referral as if it is the official site plan submission. So any and all comments that you think you have on it, I'd like to see if we can get those pulled together for the memo that we would send on to the town board in a couple of weeks. So with that, I have provided you with some comments. The town engineer did submit a letter today, and Ken and Andy, you'll get a copy of those so you can see those after this meeting. We'll make sure to get them to you. But in terms of the process, again, this is a referral right now from the town board. The concept plan was submitted to the town board for their consideration. They did review it and essentially approve a concept of what you see before you today. That plan is then to be reviewed by the planning board, by the town workforce housing committee, and the waterfront advisory committee within 60 days of receipt of that at the next regularly scheduled meeting, which is where we are today, in that kind of the middle of that process. We will provide comment, you as planning board will provide comments, the other boards will provide comments back to the town board, at which time they're going to hold the public hearing on the concept plan, discuss any comments that have been received, and make those comments an official part of their minutes of that public hearing. A secret review will need to be undertaken within the process, and the town board may or may not ask the applicant to make any refinements to the concept plan. They may act to approve it with modifications or conditions, or disapprove the concept plan. And then they have to, at the same time or sometime in that process, also decide to lay down the zoning map amendment, the floating zone. So the workforce housing zone is essentially a floating zone right now. And the town board has to, by local law, put that zone down onto this property to make it official. So assuming we get through the process of the concept plan being reviewed, the comments go back, the town board talks to the applicant, whatever changes are requested or made, the town board finds that it's to the point they're okay with it, and they lay down that zoning on the property so this can move forward. Again, somewhere in their secret will take place. We're in the process of trying to figure out that process. Once all those things have come through and the town board has approved it and it's all laid down, this will eventually come back to the planning board another time for your review as an official site plan and special use permit. My hope is at that time that we're essentially at a point of dotting the i's and crossing the t's, that we've addressed a lot of these comments kind of up front. But that will be the official site plan review process that the planning board will have to go through. So you'll see it now. The planning board will also see a referral for the rezoning when they lay the zoning down on the property. And then we'll see it one last time as the site plan application that needs to come in. The county planning board will also see the same. They will get this review 3 times as well. They currently have it as an unofficial review that they're taking a look at. They will take a look at it when it goes through the zoning process, and then they will take a look at it again as an official referral from the planning board for site plan. So there are a couple steps to go through, but again, my hope is that right now we can, you can take a look at it, ask any questions you have, and we'll put together a memo to send on to the town board with any questions or comments that you have for them to take under consideration.
Okay, so I'd like to open it up to planning board members for comment. Who would like to start?
Well, I have a pretty long list of questions, Melody. I certainly don't want to monopolize this time. On the other hand, I suspect this is the only opportunity we're going to have to ask questions, correct?
I think if I heard Jim correctly, this is the time to really get them on the table, so that the town board has all of their comments from the planning board in hand when they look at this again. So yes, I think, we need to take our time with this tonight if that's what we need to do.
Based on the timeline that Kim took a look at from Grant and Lyons, I believe the planning board would need, unless we want to ask the town board for some type of extension, we'll need to have that comment letter kind of ready to go after the next planning board meeting, the first June meeting. So we only have a couple weeks. If everyone thinks we need more time, I'm more than happy to ask the town board if we can have more than 60 days. I don't know exactly how that'd work out, but that's what's in the law.
Well, can we get our questions on the table now, Jim, and then at the end of the conversation tonight, confer with John to see if we need to ask for an extension?
Oh yeah, by all means. Tonight is definitely for discussion of the project. Just kind of want to put out there the time.
Okay. Edna, do you want to jump in?
Sure. It's kind of difficult to know exactly how to proceed because obviously there have been discussions with the town board. For example, we just heard that the town board asked for more muted colors. So it sounds like to a large extent, this is already, it is what it is, and it's kind of already accepted by the town board.
I wouldn't say that. I think this is your opportunity to express your own opinion as a member of the planning board, and don't assume that any conversations that have taken place with the town board are binding.
Okay.
Yes, I would agree with that. And Edna, also, please bear in mind that the planning board has a lot more experience than the town board does in looking at plans like this. And I would encourage you and all the board members to, bring your experience and expertise to bear and your comments and questions, so the town board can consider those things.
Okay, well, let me start. The first question I have is, how was the number of proposed units arrived at? I realize that the zoning law talks about a maximum of 80, but why 80? And why are they all proposed to be affordable versus some portion being middle income and market rate?
Okay, if I may answer that. The developments that we've done in the Hudson Valley, they have ranged from 72 units up to 89 units. We have a project we're breaking ground on in a couple of weeks, the first of its kind in Putnam County, and that is 75 units. We have a similar project we're working on the eastern side of Dutchess County, and that is 80 units. So there are funding limitations that we deal with, and the 80 units is in the code, and we feel that the site is well suited for 80 units. The market is very strong, will support 80 units, and this is all predicated, of course, on obtaining the necessary funding. And it's a if the zoning allows 80 units, it's a number that is been widely accepted by the various funding sources. In regards to the middle income, we have units at 80 and 90% as well. Hold on just one second. We have 12 units at 80%. We have 6 units at 90%. So that's a total of 18 units. And those rents are higher than the other rents. Those rents are for a 2-bedroom range from $1,950 up to $2,150 $1,150 for a 2-bedroom. For a 3-bedroom, it ranges from about $2,200 up to about $2,400 for those 80 and 90% units. So we have the middle income program. New York State has a middle income program. However, it's it normally only used in more urban settings. So what we do, we employ a mixed income model, and that's how we wound up with what I stated, 12 and 6, 18.
But no market rate units, correct?
No.
And why is that?
Well, it's a model we have not used. There are complications with that, and we prefer to just have some higher units at 80 and 90%. Using the main funding source for this development is tax credits, and with tax credits comes a tremendous amount of regulation and compliance. And when you add market rate units, they're not to take into the weeds, but they have nuances called next available unit, and it's complex. The market rate has worked on larger projects. You've seen it more in New York City and Lower Westchester, where they use an 80-20 rule or a 70-30 rule, but that's not the model here.
And then what I'd like to do, and I don't want to cut you short, but I want to kind of go back and forth. And if I'm going to ask in between your questions, if there's anybody else from the planning board that would like to offer a question, and then we'll come back to you. But I'd like to offer some other opportunities. Anybody else want to jump in or let Edna just keep going? Okay.
The site, as you mentioned, is quite difficult because of its terrain. And I know there has been a request from the town board for more landscaping between the parking area and the buildings. If there were some way to reduce the footprint of the buildings, that obviously would be helpful. I realize that our zoning law restricts the buildings to 2 stories, but my question is, if this were increased to 3 stories, similar to your High Ridge Gardens in Poughkeepsie, would that not help to reduce the footprint of the buildings and leave more space available for landscaping or community outdoor space and so forth?
Well, I can answer that from a site planning perspective. Absolutely, you're absolutely correct. It would definitely reduce the many impacts of the project. I'll have to let Ken and Mario discuss, whether or not the 3-story model would work for this situation.
Yeah, if I may jump in, these buildings are walk-ups. So adding another story means two flights of stairs. Not a model we've desired in the past. We try to stay away from that extra story with walk-ups.
In my looking through the internet, I see what look like 2-story apartment buildings with use of dormers in the roof, so that the 2nd-story apartments obviously have 2 stories. Bedrooms are upstairs. Obviously, that doesn't give you a full 3rd story because you're dealing with the slope of a roof and so forth, but it still adds significant space. Is that something worth considering?
Okay, so a 2-story apartment, AKA a duplex apartment is what you're referring to, right? Living space and then bedrooms above. I'd have to, yeah, I'd have to discuss this with Ken and.
Mario, I think the comment was more directed where you see, let's say, a large gabled roof, if you will, with dormers. Am I right, man? Am I saying this correct? Okay. And where you use part of the almost like a half story upstairs. You know, it would obviously change the design to necessitate an elevator. We prefer in non-senior developments to not have elevators. I prefer, you know, two-story walk-ups, as Mario has mentioned. But our senior, a lot of our senior buildings are 3 stories and or 3.5 stories actually, and do have elevators. But here, if we were to take that one particular design and work on a dormer roof, I think it would necessitate a redesign of the buildings. Right, Marion, am I correct?
Yes, of course, of course.
The other thing I would mention is, as far as the dormers were concerned, I think we were showing dormers in some of the earlier layouts, Mario, and then we changed that. Is that right?
Yes, we had reverse gables facing front. We had a different sort of front elevation prior, which may look more like what Edna has mentioned, but we were asked to use the shed roofs. We went towards the shed roofs instead.
So is a redesign of the building, is that within the realm of possibility?
Ken, I'll look at you for that.
I'm going to yield to somebody. We spent a fair amount of time getting here, so we are. This is where we are. I think that would have to. Right, we started this last, I believe, the design last July, and we arrived at this when, Andy? Early winter?
Yeah, it was early December. Yeah, sometime around there.
I just need to point out, if we add a story, I will have an issue with the 35-foot height. I don't know if the planning, it's not in the planning board's power to change that requirement, correct? We would need a variance at that point.
No, or the town board would have to change the zoning law.
Okay.
Correct.
However, if there are specific recommendations as to the architectural design, anyone should take that into consideration. The fact that the town board has looked at this and made their own suggestions, and then you make a good point, meaning we did not see where this design started. So we are only picking it up here, and that should not preclude us from making our own comments about whether we feel these fit the design standards of Rhinebeck or not. So that's a separate discussion from how many stories, but I would encourage you to comment also as to the architectural design.
I see Craig had his hand up. Craig?
Okay, Craig.
Yeah. I just had a question. If this plays any kind of a role in making the village more walkable, are there any kind of amenities that would be collateral to this development, like a walkway over or a footbridge over the Rhinebeck Kill? Was that explored at all as part of this plan?
A footbridge over the Rhinebeck Kill was not discussed. What was discussed was extension of the sidewalks along that would be West Market Street, Rhinecliff Road, to connect the site to the village. We didn't really get into extending it any further than that. to basically
Okay.
to where our driveway enters. The
Andy, are
roadway.
there are you having conversations with Winnicky? Do they have adjacent easement?
Yeah, actually, I mean, I think
If I could jump
Winnicky
in,
has.
Andy.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you, Ken.
We met, I was contacted by, forgive me, I forget the gentleman's name. I worked with him over at Dutchess Planning years ago. And we met with him and another member from Winnicky and two members of the HOA board for the gardens. And what Winnicky's goal is to extend the sidewalk from the village line down to the property that they have an easement on that they obtained through the gardens. And their goal is to make a series of trails throughout that that property. That's the property immediately to our west. And they wanted a trail system throughout that property and have that trail system be tied into the village. I think there may be, we didn't hear anything else from them. I just heard that there possibly was a discussion or talk about putting more of a sidewalk on the other side of Rhinecliff Road. But, we told Winnicky that if they work with the town and so forth, we will work with them. What they were seeking was a trail from the gardens property through the lower part of our property to connect it over to the sidewalk that would be installed on Rhinecliff.
Okay, thank you, Ken. I have so I believe your impact statement essentially asserted that there wouldn't be any traffic impact. I think that's stretching it a little bit. It's hard to imagine. I think you said 129 parking spaces. Is that correct? Was it 129?
Yep, 129 parking spaces. Yep.
So one has to presume that most of those will be going in and out on a regular basis. I have very, very strong reservations about your main entrance coming in from Astor Drive. I think that road is simply inappropriate for this kind of access. I really believe that we need to be looking at Route 308. I understand it makes a driveway a little longer, but I think I don't think there's support either at the town board level or in many other places for that being your primary access. And if 308 becomes your primary access, I would really like to see that driveway, that main driveway coming in greatly enhanced with landscaping as well. I think it's a long drive. I just don't want to see a long road of blacktop. So I don't know how others feel, but I just don't feel, I mean, just this past weekend, the original gates to Astor Drive were reinstalled, given to the village, excuse me, by the Verrilli family, only reinforcing the historic nature of that drive itself. So I just think it is totally unsuitable and needs to be revisited.
Melody, this is Jim. I can tell you as the town planner, I feel the same way. I put that in the memo to you. I can also tell you that I spoke with Elizabeth, and she has told me that without getting primary access onto Rhinecliff Road, the town board is not going to move this forward. They feel that that is an absolutely vital connection. They don't want to see access coming on Astor Drive. So I think, Andy, I mentioned that to you previously. You've heard that. But, again, the town board has made it pretty clear that this is a non-starter without that access. So we're going to have to work with the town board, or town is going to have to work with the applicant and, DOT and figure this out, what the situation is. But it is definitely a significant issue.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned earlier that, if that's the case, I think we can work with the DOT and basically tell them that the town isn't going to permit us to use Astor Drive, and we'll work to make that work, that the primary access. I think we can make that happen. As far as landscaping is concerned, we haven't even we've got a few trees that I put on the plan. We'll get an actual landscape architect involved to do a real landscape plan as we progress the project. So we'll definitely take that into account with as far as the main entrance is concerned, Melanie.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't want to be going on 308 and looking at a cut up there. I really want it to remain as rural looking as it does right now. So to the best of the ability, I understand there will be change, but I think we just need to get that on the table at this point.
I agree. And some stone pillars at some point, Andy. I don't know how far down, close enough to Rhine Cliff Road, but we've done that on some of our other developments, and it's quite nice, right? With lighting. Yes. And different landscaping near and around the pillars, and then more pines lining the driveway as it goes up.
Well, I'm just cognizant. I appreciate all these comments, but of course, part of what we're seeing tonight does not include a landscape plan. And so we really aren't able to comment on that. And I think many of us agree that the landscaping of this will certainly go a long way toward enhancing this project. So we're a little bit caught between a rock and a hard place. We're not sure it's coming, when and how it's coming back to us, but I think there's a great deal of work that needs to go into the landscaping plan for the entire property.
We agree, Madam Chair, and it will be a very robust landscape plan, and I look forward to working with you and the board to get your comments once we distribute that plan.
Edna?
I have another question about architectural design. Going through the Kearney website, we see that you have done a number of lofts, loft
Yes.
apartments in Beacon, Peekskill, and so forth,
Yes.
where you have converted existing buildings to affordable housing. And these buildings offer distinctive architecture, and the apartments seem to have unusual light and space due to their large windows, high ceilings. As I remember, some have balconies. The problem, of course, is that we don't have any such existing buildings. When you look at these apartments, these loft apartments, although the buildings are older and handsome, the look actually is quite contemporary. Were you asked to do a not contemporary design?
Before Mario jumps in, just a couple of things. The buildings actually, believe it or not, the lofts on Main and Peekskill, Queen City Loft in Poughkeepsie, maybe some of you visited that with the Zeus Brewery, even West End Lofts in Beacon. Those are all actually new construction. We made it look like they were rehabs of existing buildings. There was an initiative at the time to try to attract more foot traffic in urban centers. And we came up with that model. The model included a preference for artists, affordable artists. And that was used in Peekskill, Poughkeepsie, and West End Lofts. That model is not embraced so much anymore, but the design of those buildings was primarily used and continued to be used in more urban settings. So I think our lighting package in regards to the lighting of the interior of these units, you will find will be quite nice, and our finishes will be quite nice. The two buildings, the first two buildings we did, Lofts on Main and Peekskill and Queen City Loft in Poughkeepsie, were actually steel and concrete buildings. And you just can't build that model anymore. We built it back in 2015 and 16, and we barely got out alive. But you can't build that today, even for market rate. But we did it to start a model, and we've actually gone upstate with that model now. We have several projects upstate in smaller urban areas and cities that are looking to get more foot traffic and revitalize certain parts of their downtown. We haven't used that model in a more of a suburban setting. Mario, I think there were a couple other questions in there on architecture. Maybe you can answer.
Yeah, Ken, I mean, you made the important point, those were urban buildings, they were infill sites. They were a much larger scale, of course, up to 75 feet tall in Peekskill, hence concrete and steel. But no, we were not asked to not do a contemporary building. To answer that question, that was this is the style this is the style we felt appropriate for this site. This model we've used on other projects also with the two-story walk-up. They're beautiful apartments. They are spacious, and we are always at the maximum square footage allowable by the state for our apartments. Just to point that out also.
Could I butt in for a minute here, Edna, just for a second to follow up on what you've been saying?
Sure.
And I think as I'm listening to the discussion here, it's becoming clear to me that what's being presented here doesn't represent Rhinebeck. It represents other places with other projects were done in other communities. And as I look at our zoning law, for example, Article 8, neighborhood infill has very distinctive guidance on how to develop the lands close to the village, including this property here, so that it would be reflective of the village design, the residential areas. I don't see anything like that here. Basically, this looks to me like a residential strip mall, which is one of the things we tried desperately in the comp plan and over the years developing our design guidelines to try to both avoid, and where we do have that already, particularly on Route 9, to try and design it out so that it no longer had that look to it. We do have design guidelines to use, and as a planning board, we have required people coming before us to use those guidelines in designing structures to be put up in our town, and we have turned down a number of projects because they weren't able to do that. Granted, this is the first time we're seeing this. We don't know where it first came from. I realize there are a great many constraints on this property. I strongly suspect the reason this property was chosen for an affordable housing project, which we desperately need, is the availability of the village water and sewer line. The constraints on the property are significant, and perhaps that's why this project can't be built according to the standards we have in our zoning law and our design guidelines, because the property won't permit it. But frankly, I think if this is what affordable housing has to be, we desperately need it, then perhaps we need to acknowledge that there's some things in Rhinebeck that just aren't going to be designed to fit into Rhinebeck, and I think that would be a shame. And I'd also like to know why the state DOT doesn't want the main entrance for this project to be on Route 308.
Andy can answer.
I can't speak to the architecture, but as the DOT's policy is that if a project has multiple access points, particularly from a local road, they do not permit a curb cut on their highways. So they're actually allowing the entrance only into the site would be knowing that Astor Drive is available to us. That would be the only way that they could allow that. So we'll need to have some additional conversations with the DOT and basically explain to them that the Astor Drive is not going to be available to us, which hopefully will open up that avenue for us.
Yeah, and I think it's fair for me to say that the town board has made it clear that they want that access on Rhinecliff Road, but if it comes down to it, I think the town board will come back and say there is no access on Astor Drive, or at best you might get emergency access, because I do believe, and I think others do, that we need that secondary access, certainly for emergency access. So that might be the best that will come out of it, but I don't think you're going to get a full entrance, even vehicular entrance on that Astor Drive entrance, if that's what it takes. The town board has made it pretty clear.
Understood. And honestly, I'd like to avoid the disturbance on that end as well. So if we can come up with something that would minimize that, I think that would be a good thing.
Is Wells Manor Lane a town road or is just a private road that was designed specifically to serve Wells Manor?
It's a private, it's a private road that, the grantee, which I think was Northern Dutchess Hospital, or an affiliate of that, which built Wells Manor, also donated the land to the village of Rhinebeck for the sewage treatment plant. So there was a series of easements there anticipating that they would need access to this property, so it wouldn't be landlocked on the Astor Road site. So from Astor Drive to where Wells Manor Lane starts, Wells Manor is a private road with a series of right-of-ways over it and through it. Here you go. Yeah.
I think, Andy, maybe we can explain it better. That this line is, maybe it's a topo line. There's a dividing line in here where the property lines are, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you're pointing to the right spot. The hatched area over Wells Manor Lane is the right of way or easement. I forget what they're calling it. For the benefit of this property.
So this 80-unit project would be basically, as presented here, would be accessed by a private road, not by a town road, a village road, or a county road. This project is the largest residential project proposed in the town of Rhinebeck since 1987 when the Gardens was approved, which of course goes out onto a state road, also Astor. I just don't see how it's even conceivable that something of this size would go onto a private road, then onto a small village road, Astor Drive. I just don't see how that's can even be conceived of.
Thank you, Michael. Jim, could you go back to the elevation of the buildings? I just wanted to continue with a comment based on what Michael said. For me, what's also contributing to, and it's not my term, it was Michael's term to use the strip mall, but the amount of blacktop is so detracting. You know, when I look at this, what I see is one big parking lot. And I know we talked about it previously in our pre-conference meeting, and I know that the property is terribly constrained, but I don't see a lot of creativity here in trying to break that up. It just looks like a huge parking lot in front of a storefront, and it's unappealing in my opinion. Edna, do you have more comments? I'd also want to make sure that there are no comments from other members of the planning board. Craig, Sean, Joe, haven't heard from you. Craig, I heard a little bit from you, but Sean and Joe, any questions or comments? No. Okay. Edna,
I love
do you
being
have...
put on the spot, Melody.
Well, I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
No, I think I would echo a lot of what was discussed tonight. I think there's obviously a need for this. I think my bigger concern is what's outlined tonight the best for the community, which is what's been communicated tonight. I mean, as many people know, we need housing. It was recently communicated even through Dutchess County. We need housing at a lower price point for the community. So I want to kind of try to balance the need for that along with our comments tonight. And I think that's the only thing I have to say.
Okay. Edna, do you have anything else?
Simply that I think that the opportunity is to reduce the footprint of the buildings. You need that, I think, in order to provide more landscaping and more community outdoor space. Obviously, you can do that by reducing units, or you can build up, and I would see no reason not to build up. The only other thing is, in my looking through the internet, when I'm seeing innovative work, it's contemporary, because that's what offers you larger windows, somewhat higher ceilings, you know, a sense of openness. So I would hope that that's not ruled out.
And then to kind of rip off what you just said, like it just what I don't see is open landscape. I don't see an opportunity for kids to be able to play. I don't see an opportunity for families to actually, which is what I would assume in many cases this is going to serve, to have a place to call home. I see a lot of hardscape, and I see a lot of hardscape, and I think if there's an opportunity to make this more of a home for families that could really enjoy this space, I know that's what my kids would want if I was in this community.
Just to follow up on that, Jim, if you could go back to the site plan, I just want to kind of show some of the things that we're trying to do with as far as open space is concerned. So I mentioned every single one of these buildings is a walkout basement. So the buildings on the bottom floor will have, correct me if I'm wrong, Mario, we'll have doorways that open up onto lawn areas in the back here. So all of these, even in areas where we have steep slopes, we're proposing retaining walls so that every single one of these buildings has at least a smaller portion of yard in the bottom area here. And then some of these other buildings where we're actually proposing to cut the slope back to provide that lawn area. And as I said, we are showing walking trails, as best we can through here, possibly some additional trails through here. We haven't gotten that. Sorry, you can't see my cursor on the western side of the property. And then also there's the, there is a playground proposed, and we can certainly work to try to provide a little bit more, well, we'll do our best to provide more open space as best we can, based on, the requirements of the site.
To Andy, to your point, I did fail to mention earlier, all of the apartments at the front and rear that are at grade level have a walkout patio. Actually a walkout porch, front and rear. They all have a roof and columns.
Do you have you shown us elevations of the rear side of the buildings?
No, we have not submitted that yet.
So we don't know what that's going to look like.
It's right. It's a similar design scheme, but I don't think we submitted that.
Well, I'm trying to imagine what, I'm trying to visualize what you just described, and I can't.
Okay. Yeah, we'll get all the elevations in the future, of course.
I'd be interested to know what the nature of the view is, and also what does it smell like?
Well, right. The view is, it's pretty wooded right now, so it's hard to see much. But I think once the trees are cleared, I think you're going to have a fairly decent view across to the west toward the across the river towards the mountains in that direction. I don't think there's going to be much to obstruct that. As far as the smell is concerned, walking around right now, it smells. There's no odors to speak of.
Okay, so the proximity to the sewage treatment plant is not a factor.
Oh, no. I don't know if you've ever been there before or not, but you right at the driveway to the sewage treatment plant, you don't really smell much.
Andy, can you clarify? I guess I need a little more clarification on when you were talking about tree removals opening up a significant view to the west. I guess I was imagining that the west side of this property would remain wooded. Is that not correct?
Well, because of the
stormwater,
it would, but because of the grade change, Melody, we have tree clearing that we have to do to get to build the retaining walls and construct the buildings. So the trees are going to be removed, but where the buildings are going to sit, they're going to look over the top of some of the trees that are at the bottom of the hill on the west side of the property. So you're going to be able to kind of see over top of those in some cases.
The buildings are at 182, and you're down at 150, 160 down at the western property line. So
exactly.
Okay. Others?
John, I have a quick question. This is a referral from the town board. Should we or do we need to open up the public comment? There might be 1 or 2 people here. Do you have a thought on that?
You can do that if you wish. You're not required to.
Okay, I didn't think so. Thank you.
Well, Jim, I think if you wish to ask if anyone here from the public would like to make a comment, I think it's appropriate.
I think you just did, Melody. So if anyone has a comment, let's hear from the public. Please let me know. Raise your hand or turn on your screen. No? Not seeing anyone, Melody, but just wanted to put that out there as an option.
All right, John or Jim, any closing comments you'd like to make? I think we're ready to wrap it up for this evening.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I wanted to mention is that I guess from what I'm hearing from board members is difficulties in just trying to visualize everything and to give some consideration if there were photo simulations that you might be interested in seeing, that in addition to the rear elevations of the buildings, those are, that's a tool that's out there for you to get a better idea about what things may look like after the project is built. If you wanted something, a view to the project from a vantage point to the west of the project, or views of what the entrances might look like, those are tools that might help you out with that.
I think that's a great idea. Jim, any closing comments?
Yeah, again, planning board members, I do ask if you could, take a look at this, over the next, say 2 weeks or so before our next planning board meeting in June. Provide me with any comments in writing if you can. I'm going to pull all of those together and try and put it into a memo that will kind of summarize / discuss in some way, shape, or form in about 2 weeks. And then that memo will be forwarded onto the town board. Well, they will have those comments for their review. And then obviously, as I said, it'll be entered into the public record there. If you think, we kind of discussed it earlier. I don't know if we want to circle back really quickly on this. If you don't think, 2 weeks is enough time to provide those comments to me, I guess we could talk about an extension. Maybe you could shoot me an email, unless you want to do it tonight, Melody. But I think maybe we just move forward, assuming that we can do this in the next 2 weeks. And if we need an extension, I can reach out to the town board and ask. That would be an informal thing. Again, this is not a public hearing, so there's the way we treat this is a little different. We're discussing it publicly, but I'll put things together for you kind of in the background, and then we'll get it pulled together for the town board.
Is everybody okay with that?
Is it possible to get the renderings of the back of the buildings in that time frame before then?
Is it 2 weeks?
Yes. Hey everyone, this is Justin Lee from Development
Hey,
Associate Party Group. I'm the rendering guy, in case you were wondering. I'd say our renderings normally takes right about 14 days, but we can put the pressure on and try to get it turned around within that time frame.
Yeah, we'll hop on that tomorrow morning and we'll do everything we can. All right, we'll push them. As Justin said, he's been able to work his magic in the past, and we understand how important they are. All right?
Well, and I think also please consider the things that John's raised in terms of what is the entrance going to look like from 308? What's it going to look like in terms of simulation from the west? I'd like that as well. So as close as you can get to getting that all prepared within 2 weeks would be great.
Melody, if I could in closing, I think what's really important, I think a project like this is very important to Rhinebeck, but I think community in a project like this is really important to Rhinebeck. And I don't feel like we have enough details to actually be able to see clearly of what this is. Right now, I see a bunch of buildings and a parking lot, and that's all we're seeing as a planning board.
Also, we haven't been to the site, which is always something that's very important when we look at something like this.
That's a good point, Edna. Do we want to talk about a potential site visit?
I think it makes sense.
Let me just ask a procedural question of John. So John, theoretically, when Kim looked at the timeline for us, we could discuss this at our next meeting, our very next meeting. would we be able at that time, would we still have time at that time to suggest we need more time? Or do we need to be doing that now?
I think that if the earlier that you can make the request of the town board, the better, because if for some reason the town board is not inclined to grant the extension, then you're going to have to try to get as much done as you can, beforehand. I think, I don't want the applicant.
Oh dear.
We'll give it a second. Hopefully they'll come back.
Well, while we're waiting and praying, is there a sense that we will need more time? Oh, is he back?
Yeah, hopefully. Sorry about that. Remnants of the bad weather here.
Which continue.
So Melody, I just found the email. The 60 days from the date the planning board received it would be June 17th.
June 7th.
So
Still,
just a couple days.
But that would be before we would have to act at the next meeting, correct? Because the 20th is our June meeting.
Right. We have one on the 6th and then one on the 20th.
But the 20th is too late, right?
It technically, yes, unless you want to ask for an extension.
Could I get a sense from planning board members of whether they would like at this point to ask for an extension? Because I do believe that the question that Edna raised about scheduling a site visit would also be something I'd like to see put in place.
I think beyond that, Melody, there's from what we've seen tonight, speaking for myself, I certainly would not be able to recommend that the town board proceed with this project. We weren't involved in any of the development of it, and this is all we've seen. And if an applicant came before us and this is all we saw, and then we had to decide to approve or disapprove, recommend or not recommend, we would not do that. We would ask for further information, and I don't think it's unfair of us to ask for sufficient time to do that. We have a very busy schedule. We're all volunteers, and we want to do a good job. The town board, I assume, wants an honest opinion from us, and we clearly need a good deal more information. The renderings usually take 2 weeks. Well, if it takes 12 days, we have 2 days to look at it. We're not going to have time to deal with the information that we're asking for under those circumstances. And I think Edna's suggestion of a site visit is also something that we always do for everything that we look at. So if we're seriously going to try and give a recommendation to the town board on the desirability or lack thereof of this project, we need a great deal more information than we have right now. And I think that it would do the town board a service if they recognize that and provide us with that.
Yeah, I would concur with that. And, I think that the shape and nature of this project is very important to the town going forward. And I think it needs adequate time for review.
Is someone willing to make a motion to request an extension from the town board? I think that's what we need here, isn't it?
So moved, Melody.
Or I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. I'm assuming I'm going down the right legal road here, John.
Yes, you're fine. I think that it would be best if the motion included a particular time period for the extension so that everybody understands what is being asked for.
What do you think is reasonable?
What is the time it takes to get the information we need, I guess, is the bigger question, Melody.
Mm-hmm.
Is it just enough of time to take us out to the second meeting, not the next meeting, or is it more time than that? Is the question.
It's to get the materials we need.
If I heard Jim correctly, given the referral, we would have until June 17th.
I think another 30 days from there might be appropriate.
is it worth asking the people that are representing the development of how long would it take to get the materials that we're requesting in front of us?
Yeah, thank you. Mario, Andy, I'm putting you on the spot. We can turn this around by, well, before, at least 5 days before your June 20th meeting.
I guess I just wanted to have a little clarification in terms of exactly what additional information is being requested. Is it just the photo simulations and building elevations? Is there any
yes, and the
additional
entrance
information we're looking for, and the entrance?
The entrance off of Rhinecliff. Let's assume, Murphy was an optimist and so is Carney. So let's assume that the DOT is going to cooperate with us, and let's design an entrance there with something that is appealing. Okay, that's one thing. I think the rear renderings are another, and we'll huddle up to see if we can incorporate some of the other comments. I'm a little hesitant to do that because some of the design has been a result of comments. So, but let's say that's the extent of it, Andy and Mario.
I think landscaping, may I chime in and say landscaping?
Can we get that, Andy, by the June 15th?
I think we can do that by June 15th. Yeah.
All right. So if we get it to the board by June 15th, is it fair, Madam Chair, members of the board, that we get it to you 5 days before the June 20th meeting, and then discuss it at the June 20th meeting, and then I don't know how long Jim would have to pull together a memo after that.
We have to respond to the town board if we don't ask for an extension no later than June 17th.
Right, but I think what the council was asking is to put a date on it, and
I think the date was for the extension.
Right, for the extension, and then the question was, well, how long will it take our team to come up with the information? And I think we think we can pull it together by June 15th and have it to the board 5 days before your June 20th meeting. And then I guess the question is, how long after the June 20th meeting would you need to actually make comment and get a memo to the town board?
So Ken, that might work as long as we get an extension. If the town board were to say no, give the extension, and that timeline doesn't work, just put it out there.
Yeah, I agree.
So are we extending this to our first meeting in July to actually make a recommendation for our second meeting in July?
Right. So first July meeting is July 5th. The second one is July 18th. So it's a recommend. Yeah, I guess it is a recommendation. It's a memo of comments, questions, and items for the town board.
Can we make the June 20th meeting, Jim, or is that both?
I leave it.
I'm still back at the asking the town board to extend. That's what I thought we were talking about here.
We should extend, yes.
And
I
think Jim's, and I think John's comment was that our request for an extension should tell the town board how long we want the extension to be.
Absolutely.
So do we want to extend it another 30 days?
30 days based upon the information
30
received.
days would get us 2 more meetings, correct? Like to potentially get back to them?
That's the way I think so.
Not
Jim,
quite.
is that correct?
No. I'd have to check the calendar, but May 16th to June 20th, it may come up a couple short. I think we need to ask for something through May 20 or through June. I'm sorry, through June. I don't know, 24th, 25th. Give a couple days after.
There's no magic to it have to being a round number. It just has to be enough of an extension to include 2 more meetings, so we can.
I would ask for an extension to the end of June, I think, just to cover the basis, if we think that'll work, to the 30th.
Jim, we need to make it to a point where the planning board meets. The planning board has to sit down and decide what to recommend to the town board, and we're not going to do that on the end of June.
And then Jim has to write it up.
Exactly.
Well, yes.
So it's the first week in July at minimum, correct,
At
Michael?
minimum, I would say yes, and maybe the second one, because this is going to be, you're not only going to be working on this, you're going to be working on Grassmere, you're going to be working on a number of other projects, and you're going to be bombed under. We have Red Wing to work with, all these things. We've got to consider the fact that we have a lot we're doing right now, and we need time.
But it also doesn't mean that it definitely goes to that second meeting in July. It just means
That's
that we're
true.
giving ourselves the buffer of it.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And then we don't want to have to go back and ask them for a second extension.
No.
Gretchen just let me know the second June town board meeting, and I don't know what their schedule is for discussing this again, to be honest, but the second town board meeting is June 27th for the month of June. So again, if we think moving out to the end of June works, I would say the end of June. We'd have the June 6th and June 20th meeting. I guess you could always ask for another one, or if you want to go longer, that's entirely up to you. But if you need me to do something, I'll get it done one way or another.
We need to extend it to a meeting date of our meeting so that we can make our recommendation and give you enough time to prepare the resolution for that recommendation.
Right. No, I think we extended past the meeting date. So if the second meeting, 2 more meetings would be June 20th. So that's why I'm saying the end of June. That would give me a week to wrap it all together if we went to the June 20th meeting. It wouldn't take me that long. I think once we talk, it'll just take me a couple of days. But if the town board is going to discuss it on June 27th, for instance, and we got an extension to June 20th, which is only like 3 days past the deadline, give me a couple of days to pull it together and just get your individual sign-offs on it. I think that would be fine. If you think that in June works.
When is the next town board meeting?
June 13th, according to what Gretchen just told me.
So we won't.
I'm sorry, not June 13th. That's the next June meeting. When is the next town board meeting? I don't know. I'd have to look.
Well, I'm trying to get to, if we make a request tonight, we have to put into play exactly when they'll take it up.
I don't know when they're taking it up. I don't know, Ken or Andy, do you know if you're on their schedule? I don't know off the top of my head.
I'm
They
not.
had-
No, we don't know.
Gretchen, do you know when the next town board meeting is?
May 23rd, according to the website.
So the earliest they could give us an extension would be May 23rd. Correct?
They could approve, yes.
Yeah, I mean, if they have to do it at a meeting, yeah.
I don't know if they have to do it at a meeting or not.
Again, it's a referral.
Yeah,
So
the law gives
probably
us
do.
30 days, so. I would
Yeah,
assume they
it's
have
in
to-
the statute. I would like to see them do the extension at a meeting, so
At a
we have
meeting,
a
yeah.
record. Yep.
Yeah, I think it makes sense.
I'm fine with an extension to June 30th. Does that satisfy everybody?
I don't quite see the function of June 30th, but we don't meet then. We
Well,
don't meet
John
until
just
July.
said, we didn't have to have an arbitrary date.
Michael, it's to get us to past our second June meeting. Give me a couple days to write it up after that second June meeting. That's all.
Well, I guess the one question I have is if it usually takes 14 days for them to put things together, I mean, are we going to have enough time to really think this through and work over it? We just don't want to come up short, that's all.
Well, make an alternative recommendation for a date.
I would have thought the first meeting in July, and if we don't need to go that far, we don't have to go that far, but at least we have the opportunity.
That'd be Tuesday, July 5th.
Yeah, we'll be in a holiday mood and everything. It'll be great.
I'm out of town on the 5th. Not that you need me, but you'll probably be meeting in person at that point.
We'll see.
I doubt it.
I do too. Michael has made Michael, are you making a motion to ask for an extension to carry us to July 5th?
Yes.
I have a motion. Could I have a second?
Second, Sean.
Thank you, Sean. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Jim, could I ask you to work with the applicants to set up some dates for a possible site visit?
Absolutely. And would you like me to reach out to the town board to make the request on your behalf for the extension?
Please do.
Okay.
And Ken, who do you want us to contact to arrange for a site visit?
Andy will make the arrangements.
Okay, and
I'll be up there as well.
okay, I think planning board members will do as we have in the past on some of these larger projects. We'll try and get some dates from you and we'll schedule it so that everybody can come at the same time.
That's great.
Sounds good, Melody.
Okay.
Melody, I have a question for Jim, if I may.
Yep.
I know, Jim, you've got a lot on your plate, but I was wondering whether it might be, in terms of procedure going forward over this period that we have coming up, whether you could tie together, even if it's just sort of in bullets, the sort of universe of information that was asked for by the planning board tonight and provide that to the applicant. I guess what I'm after is so that I think it would be good for them to have some certainty in terms of, something in writing from the board saying, okay, this is what we need, so that as they spring into action, they'll have a specific list to focus on. So I think that's a good suggestion if you've got the ability to do it, or the capacity, I should say.
Yeah, I think they heard, but I'll work on that. I'll talk with Gretchen. We'll go through the notes and we'll pull that together, and then I'll coordinate with a couple of people. That's not a problem.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate the suggestion to make sure I didn't miss anything in my notes. So.
Okay, everybody good?
I think so. Thank you for your time this evening and the robust conversation.
Everybody.
Thank you.
It was a great conversation. We look forward to speaking with you again.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Take care.
Okay, we have two more referrals. The proposed local law, the amendment to the zoning code regarding cell towers. Jim, do you want to walk us through this?
I can do that. Cell towers and vehicular access requirements. So this one is a local law change that will permit a cellular tower to be placed in the ORP zoning district. It's really for the need that there's very little coverage in that area. If you've ever driven through there, your cell calls can drop if you're driving up that way. So the idea is that the ORP being, the zoning district that is the Office Research Park, it's a very large parcel. It provides flexibility in siting and also has some pretty substantial and reasonable standards for screening and things like that of the buildings. And you all know this, we've looked at it with Stamp, Rugies, and others. The idea is to allow a communication facility or tower to be placed on a property within the ORP. And then it would be subject to all the existing communication facility and tower regulations that exist today. So it's really just allowing it to be placed in that zoning district. I personally don't see any issues with it. I think it makes sense from a location perspective, both for need.
Jim, is there a site in mind already based upon this recommendation?
I don't know for sure exactly where on the site, no, but I do believe that there's a discussion about the desire to put one there, both by the town and the property owner. Where exactly on the property, we haven't seen anything officially.
When you're talking about the ORP, you're talking about the Rugi site?
Well, Rugies owns most of it. Yeah, there are a couple other parcels, but I would assume it would go on something that's bordered by Middle Road and 9G, right? So on the Rugies, essentially on the Rugies Triangle, I assume is where we'd be looking. Some of the site location will be dependent on, the needs of the facility, the tower, providers and, obstructions with trees and other things, but yeah.
From a aesthetic standpoint, would it be wise to put in a recommendation to the town board that one portion of the ORP that's on the north side of Middle Road where that event center was planned not be eligible because you would never screen it? It would be, rather ugly standing up there, whereas the ORP makes perfect sense because you can easily lose it inside there.
I think that's
there is that one little piece.
I think that's a good suggestion. Good catch.
It is. The only problem is then we're not rezoning it for the ORP for a particular zone. We'd be rezoning it for particular parcels. That becomes more problematic.
Well, we're just giving them our opinion back, right?
Yeah, and certainly if, again, it's going to have to fall within all the standards of the existing code for communications tower. So if someone came in with one on that property, the planning board could absolutely say it's not appropriate, it's not screened properly and all that kind of thing. But generally the uses will follow the zoning district. unless we come up with criteria for where they could be located, but then we'd have to put that into the communications facility and tower regs themselves, which we're proposing to do. This is essentially just adding the use to the use table.
But when we write back to them on this, can we just note that this question came up and we discussed it?
Absolutely. I'm just kind of throwing out there the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that you definitely have to do that because I think you have to remember that for telecommunications facilities are entitled in many cases to relaxed versions of the zoning law because of the because of federal laws. So I think any concerns that you have with respect to those kinds of things need to be stated at this, as part of your recommendation, because the zoning law will apply, but in other words, the ability to be able to get variances away from the zoning law are subject to relaxed standards under the FCC regulation. So just bear that in mind.
Okay. Other comments?
When they would come back to put up the tower, would it come back in front of us? So at that time, could we require screening? Like, do we have to do that now is my question, or is it when it comes back in front of us that we worry about screening and sight lines and the such?
Yep, it'll fall under the existing code requirements, just like a tower in any of the districts where it's permitted now. So depending on what's proposed and where. Yeah, I haven't actually reviewed a cell tower with the town, so that'll be a new one for me. I don't know when the last time a cell tower was built in town. Probably been several years.
Anyone else?
That's
Jim,
part one. Oh, sorry, go
Right.
ahead.
Go ahead. What's part two?
Part two of that same law. So there are technically two laws that were put together. One is community solar. The other is this communications facility and tower, and then vehicular access requirements. So the cell tower and access requirements are put into one law. The access requirements are a local law change that would require access from developments to be from the highest classification road unless it's not feasible, reasonable, or safe. There, as you saw tonight with the discussion of the workforce housing, there are situations where we may get requests for access to a lower classification road. Generally speaking, I don't think that makes sense. There is some concern about that potential, in the ORP. So this is going to, look at that as well. Pretty much anywhere that, if we have access to a state road, access for vehicles should be taken from the higher classification road in most instances, unless again, it's not feasible, reasonable, or safe. I don't have any concerns with it. I think generally speaking, this makes a lot of sense. There are two minor changes that need to be made. The county caught in their review. When I drafted this for the town board, put in some references to the ORP. They should not have been in there. It's a more general thing for all development. So those references would be taken out, and those were detailed in my memo. So those are the first two that are combined together into one local law.
Do you have something for us to look at, or are we proving something here tonight to go back, or what?
Well, it's a referral, right? I actually didn't put together a referral language. I should have done that. So I guess I'd ask if there is thoughts on these and whether you were, will refer them back saying that you generally agree that they are okay, because I don't have any draft language. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Missed that.
Is everybody in general agreement?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, so by consensus, we're going to ask Jim to write up a response. Does that work for everybody?
Yes.
Okay. And last one, Jim, proposed local law, community solar.
Yes, so this is a local law which will revise the existing solar energy system law in the code to add community solar as a new solar use in the town of Rhinebeck. Community solar, well, it is kind of a larger scale solar. It's actually a different operation than what's permitted in the existing large scale solar regs, in that it is a community owned system where individuals and businesses can purchase the panels and own the system. They're also typically a bit larger than what is currently permitted in the zoning code. And after quite a bit of work with the town board and input from them, It's determined that in order to permit these types of uses and systems, we had to modify some of the existing regulations to allow for these to be put in. The current draft permits them to cover up to the maximum impervious coverage permitted in a particular zoning district. And while I don't necessarily believe solar panels are exactly the same as impervious coverage of something like a parking lot, I do think that that measure seems to make sense. It actually is consistent as well with the model ordinance that's put out by NYSERDA for solar panels, that the panel should cover no more than the impervious coverage of the underlying zoning district. We've also provided changes to permit more flexibility in the design of a community solar system. And because it is a desirable element to be placed in the town and built in the town, and it provides for local ownership, there are some trade-offs that are being done that may allow for the potential for some additional tree removal and some other environmental factors that would change slightly. But those trade-offs are being done to bring in this green energy. They're being done because the system is owned by locals or can be owned by locals. It's owned by individuals and businesses. And the new law also for this does encourage multiple uses to be put on the site. In the code now, it's an allowance. This code is trying to encourage that. So things like agriculture being used in and around solar panels. It also encourages consideration of development of a microgrid and battery backups, which were comments the planning board gave me several months ago when we saw an initial kind of first cut at some ideas for this. And I've also included a tree replacement program to offset the loss of any trees over 6-inch DBH, which would be at the discretion of the planning board. So if we do have a system come in and it does result in substantial tree removal, the idea here is that the planning board could request a tree replacement program to be pulled together. What exactly that would be is something we'd have to discuss. We haven't done it before, but very often those can be street trees planted on other places on the site where the solar panels are. It could be a street tree program. People could plant trees in town parks or other places that have been dedicated and identified as a place for plantings. So when we do have some removal of these trees, we try and have offsets in other locations. So we're really trying, well, we are allowing for a little bit more flexibility, trying to provide those offsets and make sure that those trade-offs are minimizing any additional environmental changes from what the law holds now.
Jim, am I to understand, and I think this is it, that the solar panels would be basically limited to the maximum lot coverage for a specific property based upon the zoning district within which that lot is located? Is
yes.
that okay? I think one little problem I've encountered, and it's just an edit thing, I believe in the District of Area and Bulk Regulations, it says the minimum lot coverage. And that needs to be corrected because if someone wanted to come out and shoot something down like this, they'd have a good technical argument that they have no way to really say how big this can actually be because of that. So that just needs to be changed in the Area and Bulk Regulations.
That is a typo that's been in the code for a long time. It's been on the books as a change that's needed as one of the general changes for the code and as a whole because it affects the whole bulk table.
Maybe
so yes,
we can throw that one in there with this solar law. And by the way, correct that.
Yep, we could definitely look into that. And if not, we'll do it some other time because that's an issue for everything potentially.
I have a couple of questions on this.
Go ahead.
On page 2, near the end of the second paragraph, parcels shall not be less than 10 acres of developable land, defined as land that excludes natural features that can't be utilized for development of community solar. That just seems kind of vague. A point that I wanted to make further on where it deals with the height limitation is I don't think this should rule out pole mounted solar, which of course is much more efficient, much more productive. And pole mounted solar is much more adaptable to unusual terrain. So if pole mounted solar is included, then it makes that phrase even more questionable.
Where was that language at? I just pulled it up on the
It
screen.
is page 2, look at the second paragraph, start 3 lines up from the end of the second paragraph. Parcel shall not be less than 10 acres of developable land.
Yes.
Defined as land that excludes natural features. It's just kind of circular.
Okay. I'll take a look at that.
Would it be a case of, saying net density? Because we do define net density and gross density in the, in Article 13 in the zoning law. Would that be of a help?
At least it would be specific.
Yeah, so one of the things that was done with this law is that we integrated in community solar into the existing large-scale solar rules. That may be a carryover of some language from before. I'll take a look at that and see if there's some tweak we can make.
Further down on the same page, you're exempting minimum lot width and frontage requirements. I'm just wondering why they're not so terribly restrictive. And we're talking about a large array of solar. Why not keep those in place?
Those 4A already exists in the code for solar, for a large scale solar. That's not a new addition. So again, what we did was integrate in allowances for community solar while keeping the existing large scale solar regs as they exist. So for here, it originally said a lease site created for the exclusive purpose of development of a solar power plant shall be exempt from the following requirements. We just put in community solar. The rationale being, again, that we're trying to integrate in community solar within these solar power plant regs.
Okay.
So that did not change. 97% of this is exactly the same as what's in the code now. Again, just integrating in some changes for community solar.
Jim, is there a site in mind?
I
think a lot of times this is very written around who's going to benefit from it.
This is specifically going into the zoning districts that are listed here. So they can be in, HP 20, RA 10, RC5, ORP, Gateway North, Business Park, RL5, essentially all the districts that large scale solar is permitted in today.
But Sean is asking, is there a certain parcel already in mind for this? I think
There have been discussions about the potential for the ORP.
Okay.
Are we privy to that information?
What's that?
Are we privy to that information?
Well, there's no proposal yet. I mean, there's nothing official. It's just that the desire came forward. Someone was looking at that site, and there was the desire by the town board to add community solar to the large scale solar. But it'll be permitted in any of the zoning districts that large scale solar is currently permitted.
So I guess what we're asking tonight is for us to make a judgment without having all the information, though.
Well, it's a rezoning. I mean, we do rezonings all the time without knowing whether there's something specific coming in. We're not approving a project. Any project that came in would come back to the planning board. This is a rezoning to allow community solar in the town, essentially is a separate type of use of a large scale solar power plant, which is already permitted. It's not like we're introducing a use that doesn't exist today in the code. It's just a different ownership model and potentially sized operation than what is permitted with the solar power plant. But again, like I say, 97% of this code is exactly the same as what's in there today.
All right, I have a couple more. Shall I move ahead?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, page 3, the bottom of the second paragraph. It seems to me that if you go up 4 lines from the bottom, which starts, this section is not intended to regulate dead, decaying, or dangerous trees that are identified as blah, 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 blah. It seems to me that that entire sentence should go at the end of this paragraph. Otherwise, it looks like removal of trees over 6 inches in diameter will require an applicant to provide a tree replacement program, even if they're in a forestry operation. It's just confusing.
Okay, the second paragraph, I'm just trying to find it. Sorry to delay this.
Right at the top.
On page,
Right at the
Page
top.
3.
oh, I'm sorry. Second
Yeah.
paragraph down. Okay, I got you.
So just the sentence that reads, this section is not intended. My suggestion is put it at the end of the paragraph.
Okay.
And then if you look at your parentheses right there, see section 125-47.21. I think it's actually 125-47.20. If you look ahead to page 6.
I'm just taking some notes here. All right, so 125-47-21.
So it's 20 on page 6 that says, subject to the discretion of the planning board, a tree replacement program may be required.
Yep.
Also, going back to page 3, where you make that statement, you say removal of trees over 6 inches in diameter at breast height will require, and on page 6, you say may require.
Okay.
And then going down on page 3, maybe I'm confused. It looked to me like you had a duplication in A and B, but they are separate, right? One is for solar power plants and one is for community solar.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
It's essentially, it's very similar, but they had to be separated out for the purposes of what we're doing here.
Okay. On page 5, excuse me, number 15, where you're restricted to a height of 15 feet above ground level.
Yeah.
I don't think that would accommodate pole-mounted solar, and I really think that you should accommodate pole-mounted solar.
This was not intended to be pole mounted. It was intended to be ground mounted. As you can see that, that's throughout here. I'll bring that back and talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I see no reason to rule out pole-mounted when it's much more efficient. Also allows you to get underneath it easily and mow.
I think this just backs up, Jim, that this is written for a specific project that's not privy to our information right now.
No, it really wasn't. Honestly, it was written to minimize the amount of change in the code to allow for community solar. There was no real consideration of other types that may come in the future. It's utilizing what's out there now. Solar is changing quickly and we don't know what may come next. This is probably going to be amended in a couple of years again if things change again. It's entirely possible. But this is intended now to essentially allow a community solar option of what's allowed by our solar power plant code. Essentially a different operational use, but it's similar to what's there. So we didn't discuss the ideas of different types of new technology or different technology that wasn't in the existing code. It was really merely to just put in this community solar operation and allowance.
Getting back to something that Edna said about the 125-47, I think it's supposed to be letter I and then 20, because there's no 21. And I is the only section that goes up to 20.
Well,
there's a 21 on page 6.
Right. Yeah, this is 20, 21, 22 right here. I'll take a look at the references. Not a problem.
Only a couple more. On page 6, number 21 and 22 both have the phrase, as long as said relief does not require a variance. It makes it sound like if a variance is required, then the planning board does not have the discretion that is discussed. So I think what it wants to say is the planning board has discretion except for issues that involve a variance or words to that effect. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. I read a little differently, but I hear what you're saying. But yeah, that's the intent, is that, we're saying here, the planning board has the discretion to do this, but they don't have the discretion to grant a variance if that's what would be needed. So yeah, we're on the same page. I'll take a look.
Yeah, that's it.
All right.
Anyone else? Okay, Jim, do you feel you have sufficient information to summarize this?
Yes, I've got some things to take a look at, and we'll go back with some comments, questions, talking about the allowance for pole mounted solar. A couple things I may need to change, taking a look at some wording changes. Yes.
All right, planning board members, are you comfortable, again, by consensus, since we don't have anything before us, for Jim to go back and create notes and things to go back to the town board?
Yeah.
Everybody okay
I am.
with it?
I am.
Yes.
It's a terrible task, Jim, but you've got it. So thank you for all your hard work. I know there was a lot to cover. Is there anything else needs to come before the planning board? If not, could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Once again, I hate to keep thanking you for hanging in, but I don't know what else to say except thanks.
Thank you,
So,
Melody.
Take care.
Good night.
Bye.